Welcome to Rogue Bogues. This is episode 31. Big episode, Pro. We have the NBA draft to get through, the Olympics, and later on in this episode, we will be joined by all-time Australian basketball legend Luke Longley.
Getting psyched about Longley, man. Got a couple of questions to ask him, and he's definitely a star in Australia, and obscure player that I really liked watching. With Minnesota, and actually watched him a little bit at New Mexico, and then in Minnesota, and then obviously Chicago and those guys. So it'll be pretty fun.
Yeah, and a hard man to pin down at times. Doesn't do a lot of media, as he'll explain, and that's not by design. It's just something that he says he's never really sorted out. So it's nice to get him just to tell his story more, I think, mainly from, as he even says later on, from a point of view of kids knowing his story. So look forward to that one. But the NBA draft is past us with a long day. Not as many trades, Pro, as I thought. I thought it was going to be, I'm on record as saying I thought this was going to be the big banger because the last couple of drafts, there was a lot of trade rumors leading into it. It's going to be a big trade off season, and we haven't really seen that yet. We might see it, the next couple of days with free agency opening. But give me your analysis of the draft. Like, which guy should we look out for? Did the top 5, 10? Did it kind of eventuate how you saw fit, or any surprises?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of shaped it. It's getting tougher and tougher to evaluate these guys, Bogues. Like, especially with the overtime elite. I mean, the G League guys that are coming into the draft. Then you got guys, that are barely playing, just freshman year. You don't know a lot about them besides their sort of histories, and it's just getting younger and younger. So it's a little bit tougher. I didn't see any stars in this draft, like big time generational players, even though that ESPN, that they had like 8 guys being Hall of Famers already. I don't see where they saw that. I heard Evan Mobley being compared to big kid out of USC, being compared to Bill Russell. I mean, it was a head scratcher at sometimes, but I think I saw some good players. The one surprise in the top 10 was, Scotty Barnes moving up. He moved up for about 3 or 4 spots. He's an athletic kid out of state of Florida. Giddey, I think, was a little bit of a surprise as far as going 6. I thought that maybe possibly to the Warriors at 7, but, somewhere in the top 10, later in the top 10. But him being at 6 surprised me a little bit. But I didn't really know the draft like I usually do. So I knew some of the top 10 or 12 guys, but, everyone else was sort of a little bit of a surprise to me, a little bit of a, surprise to me as far as watching. How about you, Bogues? Do you pay attention to it at all these days?
Nah. That's why I was hoping you could have given us more than I am, because I don't follow college basketball much, to be honest. Like, I can only watch so much basketball, and it's predominantly Olympics and FIBA and a bit of EuroLeague, and then NBA and NBL, of course. So I don't really watch much college anymore. It was kind of janky anyway with coronavirus. It was on and off, and just didn't follow it that well. So I'm not sure how this all worked out.
Here's what I know: Cade Cunningham, the number 1 pick. Not a clear-cut one to me as far as like a guy that's going to be a LeBron, a Kobe, or anything like that. He's got good size. He's a good offensive player. He's not a great athlete. Doesn't have a really high motor. Like, the one thing that's that's worrisome a little bit for me is watching watching a lot of his workouts online. Very low energy, very just sort of hard to deal with the workout itself, as far as just getting, going hard. I mean, he did have good numbers in college, no question about it. He's going to be a good player for them, but I don't think he's going to be a transformational player. I think he's going to be a second or third option when it's all said and done. Jalen Green is a kid, he's out of Fresno, California, went to the D League. Really exciting, athletic player. Had probably one of the most flashy suits I've ever seen in the NBA draft. Something out of the Wizard of Oz. He's really athletic. He could really score. Not a cerebral player, not a big time playmaker as far as for other guys, but he could really, he's an athletic kid. Evan Mobley got drafted. He went to the Rockets, by the way. The 3rd pick by the Cavs, Evan Mobley. That's the Bill Russell comparison, which is weird. He's a big kid. He's got some ability. He could face up. He could run the floor. He's a little skinny. I think he's more like a Bam Adebayo. I think he could handle the ball. He could roll to the rim. He could, make some plays. I don't think he's great at anything, but, he's a really solid big that could definitely be, top 2, top 3 in your team. And then I talked about Scotty Barnes. Raptors drafted him. He's an athletic kid, high energy, could really strong, could really straight line drive you, good around the basket. Jalen Suggs out of Gonzaga went 5 to the Magic. He's sort of a solid skilled player, could score out of the pick and roll, was really good for Gonzaga. I think he's a lot like Murray from Denver, sort of that type of player. I don't think he could be your number one, but I think, number two, number three, he's going to Orlando. So obviously there's minutes to be played, but they do have guys that need the ball in their hands, so it'll be interesting what happens there, but they could play him off the ball, on the ball. And then obviously Giddey going to the Thunder. Sam Presti's probably the best GM in the league as far as his talent evaluation. I'm pretty excited to see Josh. It'll be interesting what happens though with that, that sort of makeup at the Thunder. They already have, they already have Shea Alexander, that they're going to put a lot of money into and give us a max contract to that handles the ball a lot. It'll be interesting what they do with him and Josh, in the same lineup. So.
I was going to ask you about that. So Gilgeous-Alexander, his usage is high was high for the Thunder. I didn't catch a lot of their games, but I know he had a great individual season. Is he handling the ball more from the two spot, or is he actually playing? Is he predominantly point and bringing it up and distributing and also scoring?
He was handling a lot out of the two. They did have some ball handlers as well, but he handled the ball a lot. I'm not a big stat guy, as you know, but the usage. I don't know his usage and all that, but I do know that he did handle the ball a lot out of the two. Played the combo guard when they subbed out the point guard, he would play. He would play some minutes there. But they had the young kid Theo Maledon. He would handle the ball a lot, out of the point guard. But he was more of a like set it up, give it to Shea and just sort of get out of the way sort of thing. So he did have the ball a lot. Now there were some rumors that Oklahoma offered Alexander for the number one pick. Now, I'm not sure if that's 100% true, but I did hear that from a couple of teams that, that sort of, it's hard to get information out of Oklahoma City.
Yeah, they keep it tight.
Presti's sort of like J. Edgar Hoover with that. It's tough. It's tight to get out. He's hard.
Shea, 35 games with the Thunder, 23.7 points, 4.7 rebounds, 5.9 assists. He actually shot it really well. 3-point percentage for him early on in his career wasn't great, and he shot at 41% from three, 80 from the line, and 50 from the field. So, look, the reason why I asked, he's 6'6", so you can move in that 2-3 spot if you need be. Will Josh Giddey get the keys to run that team from the point guard position? Now, that doesn't mean he's going to be scoring. Josh isn't a guy that's going to be looking to get 20 a game. He's more a 10, 7, and 7, those kind of nights. A Rondo-like, I think. So I think it's a good fit, but I just wonder, I'd love to see Giddey get the keys as far as a point guard role. But I commented on that. People were like, you're forgetting about SGA or Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, as we like to call him, that he's going to be that guy still. So Josh might not have the full keys thrown to him early.
Yeah, I mean, development to me, Bogues, when you're talking about that is, not to worry about it right away. Now, and minutes are important, obviously. When people say, well, he needs the keys right away, I get it, no doubt about it, and it definitely helps, but you definitely just need a plan for the kid and what that role is going to look like. I think because they're still trying to lose, they've got 1,000 picks. They got 1,000 picks in the draft in the next few years. And they've got more, first round picks and pick swaps than any other team in the history of the league. That's another useful stat for a later date. But I think that they're going to have a plan. They do a great job with their player development there and talent evaluation. I think that they're going to give him the ball. In my opinion, like Shea's a very talented scorer. He's a very talented person on the ball, but his passing he's a good passer, but he doesn't have the vision that Giddey's got. And I think that having Giddey get him easier shots so he doesn't have to handle it as much. Look, we talk about we talk about Luka on the show. We talk about Harden on the show. We talk about other guys that have really high usage rates when they have the ball in their hands. It's really easy it gets easier for them when they have people with next level vision on their team. And I think, Giddey does have some warts in his game, but his size and his passing are his probably two best assets. So I think having him on the ball and having Alexander off would be good, would be a good deal. So yeah, I'd be interested to see what's going to happen there. I don't think they're going to trade Shea. I heard they're going to extend him, and then they'll probably give him the extension, give him a year or two, and then probably move him if they need to. But I don't think they're going to do anything with Alexander. I think they're going to play them both together and just figure it out.
Yeah, I agree. I think, my only concern is I'd love to see Josh just, you don't want to guarantee any more minutes, but just getting the keys and taking his lumps. He's going to have bad games, good games, okay games, and that's the only way you're going to develop if you're a top 10 pick. And most of the guys in that top 10, bar the Warriors, really are teams that are going to be, not going to be that good. You look at the Pelicans, the Kings, the Magic, Thunder, Magic, Raptors, Rockets, Pistons. I think they're all going to be in a position where they're probably not really competing for a playoff spot, so all those guys will get minutes, and I hope Josh, just is allowed to play through his mistakes. So we'll watch that space.
And don't forget, they got Kemba. They got Kemba Walker too.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
So that's what I'm saying. Do you then? Is it a la LaMelo Ball where Josh comes off the bench for the first 20 games until he gets comfortable? Who knows? Who knows what direction they go? But the Thunder are going to be a fantastic team. No one really has them pegged for the playoffs. And I think that's actually a good thing for Josh, that he's going to actually get in the mix and play. Because sometimes as a top 10 pick, if you go to a team that just somehow snaked their way into the top 5 or top 10 into the lottery, because of their 2% chance and they got through, and you go to, they draft someone a la, Darko Milicic, goes to the Pistons, probably not a great example, but point being, he couldn't get those minutes and develop. He's playing behind Rasheed Wallace and Ben Wallace and Antonio McDyess, right? So sometimes it's better to go to a shitty team and take a lot of L's your first couple of seasons, but acclimatise to the NBA. And I just hope Josh gets those minutes. I think he will. He'll work his way into the lineup. The only last one I have here, Draymond Green reportedly called the Warriors to draft Jonathan Kuminga. Now, this one's an interesting one because I've heard Kuminga is a bit of a hothead, bit loose off the court, and on the court can be a problem in the locker room. Had a few red flags about him. So, but Draymond on record wanting them to draft him. That's going to be interesting. So we'll see if Draymond can babysit old Jonathan to make sure he stays the course mentally in the locker room, bro.
Yeah, I've heard the same things on the Kuminga kid from a couple of scouts that I know around the league, but. Yeah, hopefully that they were high on the kid, and he was a high sort of prospect. But you don't want to be influenced by a player if you had someone else in mind, and then you decided to go there. I didn't hear that about Draymond. That's new information to me. But this draft, Bogues, it's getting to be more and more interesting every year. I did a 10-year survey on it from 2006 to 2015. To me, I sort of see being a successful draft pick as someone who could last into their second contract, 6 years or more into the league. And what I found was that 28% of first-round picks don't make it to year 6. I found that 15% of lottery picks don't make it there either. If you drafted 20 to 30, it's a 44% chance of failure. And if you drafted 25 to 30, it's a 51% chance of failure. You're sometimes better off getting a top 5 second-round pick than having a late first-round pick. Their failure rate's at about 55 to 58%. So, it's getting weirder and weirder every year because these guys are getting younger and younger. And sometimes these teams don't have the sort of the patience to develop them. They don't have a plan to develop them. And these guys are sort of getting to be, they're dying on the vine. And because there's 60 new players getting drafted in, there's two-way players, there's international players that they pluck. There's 200 players in free agency that 100 out of the 200 free agents usually change teams. So it's interesting dynamic with the draft and sort of how teams handle it,
Yeah, it is. It is, and you want to have, if you've got a lottery pick, you want to make sure you're heavily vested in some sort of development coaches. Now, you don't need 50 of them like some teams are doing, but you want to make sure that you've got someone spending time. And the Warriors reportedly signed Kenny Atkins as that role. Apparently, they see a really important piece to. Drafting Kuminga was getting a good development coach. He's highly lauded as a pretty good development coach. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, I worked with Kenny in some camps in the summer for Nike, and he's very good in his player development. He was really good at developing, players in Brooklyn. He was in Atlanta as an assistant. I believe he was in New York as an assistant, but I'm not sure. Definitely Atlanta. And then, being in Brooklyn as the head coach, they developed a lot of mid-range players and mid-level players into being, solid starters. And, he did a decent job in his 1 year with the Clippers as an assistant. So it'll be interesting, where they go at Golden State, because you got to know if you could develop players. They know, in my opinion, they knew that Steve Kerr could manage great players to win championships. But now when you have these younger players coming through, Wiseman, now you have these 2 picks. your team's going to get younger. And that you need people on your staff and yourself as well to develop these young kids. And remember, besides working these guys out, doing all these workouts and these drills with these kids and put them in a weight room, NBA minutes are the only way these guys are going to get better. So, head coaches sometimes have a hard time with that. They think that their assistants passing the ball for an hour and a half a day and lifting some weights and watching some film and put them in the D League and let them play 28 minutes a game in the D League is how to get better. And it's not. You can work these guys out 14 hours a day. And yeah, it's going to help getting the reps and things. But if you don't get them NBA minutes and then let them get their ass kicked a little bit and then coach them up on their mistakes and just sort of put them in a good spot, if you just let them rot on your bench and just work them out, and then in year 3, year 4, said, okay, we're going to throw them in and we'll actually play in minutes, those guys tend to die on the vine. So it'll be interesting with those veterans, how these two young kids drafted at 7 and 14, do you find minutes for them or you just dump them in the D League? It'll be sort of an interesting scenario.
Yeah, and we spoke about the Warriors maybe having to move these 2 picks and someone else to try and get something back in return, and that hasn't eventuated, and so much so that Bob Myers was on record saying we got to start developing again. We got to start getting some young guys in. Now, to your point of playing NBA minutes, I don't see both these guys playing big minutes. One stuck behind essentially Draymond Green, and the other one is, Steph and Clay are in the mix as well. So it's going to be interesting to see where that all goes. I did one other tidbit with Kuminga was they said they liked his ability to protect the rim. So potential small ball lineups, having him at the 5 with Draymond maybe could work as well. So we'll watch that space. But nonetheless, interesting for the Warriors. The Wizards, with the big trade, they agreed to send Russell Westbrook, a 2024 second-round pick and a 2028 second-round pick to the Los Angeles Lakers for Kyle Kuzma, KCP, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Montrezl Harrell, and the number 22 pick. Now, what was interesting about this was last week, reportedly, Woj broke that the Lakers were offering Kuzma, Pope, and Harrell to every team in the league. I just laughed at that because I was like, that's not really a Woj bomb, but yeah, pretty interesting. But how do you see this? This is an interesting one for me. Westbrook is very ball dominant. LeBron's very ball dominant. LeBron's not going to play off the ball, neither is Russ. Russ's triple-double streak potentially gone, or just his dominance with triple-doubles, because I don't think his ball is going to be in his hands as much. Does Russ get the blame if they don't do well? Highly likely. I think we're going to see what Houston kind of did towards the end of Westbrook's tenure. I think we're going to see essentially Westbrook playing the 4. I really do. I think on paper it's going to look like the 4, but you'll have LeBron out there, AD, Westbrook, and then I think you just need 2 standstill shooters. You just need a Tony Snell and just a flat out old school JJ Redick type that doesn't move, Kyle Korver, someone like that at a bargain price because they can't do much with their cap. But you're going to see the floor shrink somewhat if you don't do that. If you're playing a traditional 4 next to or AD in a traditional center like Gasol with Westbrook, I think LeBron's going to be highly frustrated. I think those gaps and the floor spacing that he's had the last couple of seasons are gone, bro.
This was an interesting one, Bogues, for sure. All those points you made are valid. What I think, floor spacing is going to be a big problem. Health could also factor into it. Look, Davis has been, very sketchy with his health in the last few years. LeBron's been breaking down earlier and earlier. And now you throw out, here's the thing. You throw out Pope, you throw out Kuzma, you throw out, Montrez. All 3 of those players, none of them are all that great, right? So you're just giving 3 basically role players away. But those are 3 less players you have in your depth chart now. Now, yeah, you have Gasol, which is, you could back up Drummond if you do resign Drummond. And now you're going to lose Schroeder. So, which you're going to get Westbrook with that. But now your team, your depth chart's just like it's shrinking more and more.
And Caruso too. He's a free agent, right?
Yeah, they're probably going to re-sign Caruso, I've heard. Taylor Horton-Tucker is one guy that they really highly covet. He's a very average player at best. He's an average player at best. So he's not a player that could take over things off the bench. They need somebody off the bench that could really, sort of retool this team a little bit. They don't have any money to make it work. They can't sign and trade Schroeder, I don't think, because now, from what I've heard, I'm not a capologist by any stretch of the imagination, but they're so high on their cap, it's hard for them to do sign and trade scenarios for Schroeder now. But that could be a little bit. That could be miscommunicated on my end. But there's not a lot of room for these guys to make a lot of other, a lot of other moves to sort of put them over the edge. I think it's going to be really tough. Why Rondo was so good a couple of years ago for them is he got the ball out of LeBron's hands. But he was also a genius passer. Westbrook really isn't. He's an assist guy. He's not a vision guy. It's a big difference. Now, they did the LA thing. They got the player with the biggest name and the biggest rep, but not necessarily the best fit. Kudos to you, by the way. You did predict that they were going to bring in another all-star type player, and I didn't think it was going to happen. Of course, fucking my prediction goes down south. Shocker that happened. But I think they had a Buddy Hield deal on the table. Now, look, I get it. Buddy Hield's not a big-time name. He's not a guy that could carry your team. But he's somebody who doesn't need the ball in his hands. He can shoot 42% from three. And he can provide you with a little bit more spacing. Yes, you have to give up about the same package of players to go to Sacramento to get it done. Look, Kuzma didn't move the needle at all. Caldwell Pope didn't move the needle at all. And neither did Montrezl Harrell. So they didn't give up a lot of individual talent, but they gave up numbers. And now when you only have mid-level exception left and minimums to give out, there's not a lot of other weapons you could use to add players. Now, you could add that mid-level guy for $9 million, I believe, or so. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I think they will have that. But again, not a lot to sort of make a big splash. And I think they're going to deal with health issues. I think, game management stuff and, resting guys. But Davis, can he stay healthy? Can LeBron stay healthy? Can Westbrook stay healthy? And then can they gel as a unit together? Which I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I agree. It's just going to be fun to watch because there's one basketball and both those LeBron and Russ, the usage. I mean, Russ, like you said, he's a willing passer, but he's not an assist creator. He's going to get a lot of easy assists, but then you still got to get AD touches. They're going to need some role players, and role players aren't going cheap anymore. You got to pay for Duncan Robinson's about to get a money bag. He's not $20 million. Yeah, and I wouldn't say he's a role player. He's a step above a role player, but he shoots a piss out of it. And those shooters don't come cheaply anymore unless you're getting one towards the end of their career, a la JJ Redick, where you can get him kind of towards the end of a contract. So they need a couple of shooters, and if they don't get a bit more shooting on that team, I just don't see how that's all going to fit. And health is going to be the big key. But we'll watch that space. A quick rundown. I'll run through all these. Tell me which one you like or want to chat about. Tristan Thompson to Sacramento for D. Wright to Atlanta, Chris Dunn and Bruno Fernando to the Celtics, Josh Richardson to Boston they just announced that was for basically a throw-in, yeah.
Trade exception.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Favors to the Thunder for a pick and cash, essentially, not no player in return. Rubio to Cleveland for Taurean Prince and picks and cash. Landry Shamet to the Suns for Javon Carter and 29. He's obviously with Brooklyn. Plumlee and the 37th pick to the Hornets for pick 57. So people look at that like, well, that's not a fair deal for the Hornets. Kind of got a better player, but salary, getting rid of some salary. They're the ones that have kind of been flagged so far. Which ones do you think? The Josh Richardson one is interesting to me, Pro, because I think he's a decent player, but end of his contract, 1 year left, I believe. Boston reportedly trying to clear cap space for the following season.
Yeah, Boston doesn't, again, they're like some of these other teams. They've got so much money invested in Tatum and Brown, and, it's really hard for them to add a lot of assets. They don't have cap room really to do that this year at least. I know they've made some deals, the Al Horford deal, which is going to give them some flexibility in the next couple of years, but this year is going to be tough. So they have that trade exception that they acquired last year. So basically a trade exception it's free money, which if you're over the cap, you could use this as house money, where you can give $11 million to you could take back a player for $11 million in salary. Probably, I think, so from like $14 million to $8 million, so $8 to $14 million, you could take a player on essentially. And all you got to do is give him back a player and just any type of player. Usually it's a player that they have the rights to, a draft stash guy that they're never going to bring over, but you need a warm body to trade them that you have access to. So it's usually the trade exception plus the player. And I don't know the player they got in exchange. Again, they'll never come over. So yeah, they got Josh Richardson for almost nothing. Look, they need talent over there. They don't have it. They traded Kemba Walker, even though that he was a little bit injury prone. He did average 19 a game. Al Horford's sort of at the twilight of his career. He's not really going to help you out that much. You basically have Tatum, Brown, Marcus Smart, and some other small little pieces. So they need to acquire players. So Richardson's, he's an average defender, an above average defender. He's an average shooter from three, a little bit streaky, but he's a kid who's been around and adds some defensive toughness to the team. But, not a lot of offensive firepower, but we'll add, at least he's talent. It didn't cost them anything. They didn't have to give up any talent for it. And then, they got Bruno Fernando, the kid from Angola. I think he played at Maryland. He's like just an energy guy off the bench who could, roll to the rim and play some defense. But they just needed somebody. They needed a warm body. He may not even be on their roster. So that's sort of where that trade goes. And now they got more minutes for Rodney Williams. The big kid, the young big. Tristan Thompson gets out, so they get more minutes for Williams at the 5. So. That's basically it. Robert Williams, not Rodney Williams. I apologize.
Yeah,
but yeah,
you anticipate there'll be more trades coming up. Do you think it's going to be a busy one in the next couple of days, or do you think it's just going to kind of just be like this, like a few just cash clearances from rosters, but nothing really major?
Bogues, you never know with this stuff. You never know. I think everybody's waiting for the Simmons blockbuster. I think you're going to have to wait a while for that to be a blockbuster. I think that's not going to be much. And we'll talk about that, I guess, later in the pod. But you're probably going to see something go down. It's always like, we're not seeing that many trades. Well, the Simmons deal, everyone was saying, well, that's going to get done on draft day. Well, Daryl Morey is not, like, Philly is not going to care about draft picks. So, like, usually if you have a player like Simmons that you want to deal, you do it on draft day to get somebody's picks. Like, if you're going to do it to Golden State, you would get it before the draft to get their 2 picks. Philly doesn't need picks. They need talent, because they don't have enough talent to go over the edge there to get to a championship level. So they're not worried about draft picks. They're worried about the package of players they can get back to get them over the hump. So you'll probably see a Simmons deal at some point. I don't think it's going to be a day from now. It's probably going to be middle of the summer, early fall deal, in my opinion. You'll see some trades, but I don't think it's going to be any blockbusters, both, to be honest with you.
Touching on the Warriors, reportedly Philadelphia just asking for drug money for Ben. Like, they're just asking crazy deals. Apparently it was the Warriors. They asked the Warriors for Wiseman, Wiggins, the 7th pick, the 14th pick, plus numerous future first-round picks, all for Ben Simmons. And the Spurs, someone from the Spurs had leaked a similar story that, Morey's just asking way too much. So now the truth's somewhere in between. Obviously, there's teams out there trying to hammer down the value that Philly can get by knowing that, let's be honest, Ben wants out. The other story with this is Ben Simmons has gone completely AWOL from the Philadelphia 76ers. He has the franchise or the organization, anyone within the organization has not been able to contact Ben since the day their season ended, which was in 2 or 3 months ago. Won't return calls. Their agent won't return calls to the Philadelphia front office or coaching staff. So he's disconnected completely. The writing's on the wall, and I think teams now aren't stupid. They know you're going to ask us for something stupid. We know he wants out. Are you really going to take the risk, a la James Harden, of bringing this kid back into training camp where he doesn't want to be there, causes a whole distraction leading into what should be a championship type rebuild for a championship, essentially? Like, they were that close. Again, they got to the second round, but they need to make some tweaks and try to better themselves to a conference finals or a finals. Do you want that distraction to Ben Simmons in your locker room? So I think the value's getting lower the further this goes. I think teams, trading partners know that. And yeah, I mean, maybe it doesn't happen just based on that. If Morey's going to be stubborn on it, I just don't see them getting equal value now for Ben. I think they're going to have to, you get a similar type talent, maybe a Wiggins and a pick or something like that, but not much more than that, Pro.
Yeah, so here's what's going to happen. He's going to go to 29 teams and knocking on doors and asking for the Lufthansa heist from the Goodfellas. He's going to ask for a king's ransom. 29 teams are going to tell him to fuck off. All right, they're going to say, look, do you know what you're trying to peddle to us right now? I mean, have you watched the news? Have you been on social media? Have you watched any basketball? Ben's not an easy sell to teams to give you a ransom for. You don't have Shaquille O'Neal. You don't have Johnny O'Neal. You've got a player that has a specific skill set. He can guard people. He's got size. He can pass, but he can't shoot, and he refuses to shoot. And obviously, he's not been the easiest guy to handle in your organization as far as transparency, being able to communicate. So then you're going to start getting lower deals. I think Philly's fucked because with this whole their talent with Embiid and Embiid's obviously the number one guy. They're role players. Tobias Harris, high-level role player, not a role player. He's a little bit more than that. Obviously, he's got talent. Thibault, to me, is a fucking gem because of his defense. I think that with Simmons, he doesn't fit. But, with the he'll help some teams. Obviously, he's going to elevate your talent, but they need more. These teams are going to start going over Philly. Obviously Milwaukee's at an all-time high from winning a championship with their sort of focus and their, they've got all this sort of, confidence in their game and they're at another level. You've got Brooklyn, who's going to obviously, can continue to add resources to that roster. You've got other teams that are going to just start getting better. So I don't know where they go from here. Obviously this thing is past the point of no return. He's not calling them back. Distraction, playoff problems. The media's killing it. I think that they're going to end up trading to Portland for McCollum. I don't think any other trade's going to work because, even if they did that deal, Bogues, with Golden State, first of all, you'd be, it's ridiculous to even think about that trade. But say you did it. That doesn't make them better. It makes them way worse. You get 4 picks that aren't really going to help you. You've got
Wiggins and Wiseman. Yeah.
Wiseman, who's an okay player. He's an above average starter, right? Young kid, but you already...
Yeah, but you got Embiid.
You got Embiid.
Exactly.
Yeah, then you got Wiggins will probably help you more than anything, and I don't like Wiggins either. So why the fuck would anybody do that trade? Ray Charles wouldn't do that fucking trade. No offense to Ray Charles, I apologize. And don't edit this out, by the way. I said it, I'll own it. But that's the problem. So, you need a player that's going to help you. McCollum's not 100% the answer. But he gives you offense. He can shoot. He can definitely give you a spark. People aren't going to play him. They play Simmons the fifth. If I'm defending Simmons, I'm in the 5th row. I'm not fucking guarding him. He can't make a shot. He doesn't want to shoot. So you need a guy who's going to score. And for Portland, they're already not working. Lillard's one foot out the door. So you need something. You need to change that up. They don't have anybody that can guard anybody on their whole roster. So you need somebody else. Norman Powell's a little bit pissed because the ball never swings to him. So now this actually gives them it's something different. It's not going to make them a championship team, but it's a little different. Look, you could go to the trade machine all you want and figure into these trades, but they're crackpot trades. They're fiction. What is a trade that a team's actually going to do? You could go to the cap room teams, but you're not going to get anything back. If I'm taking Simmons, if I'm San Antonio and taking Simmons, I'm not giving you any of my players for Simmons. I'll give you some picks, but I'm not giving you. So who's going to give you a player that's worth anything? And I think that's going to point towards McCollum. Now, Morey's going to say no until he's like, all right, fuck it. Let's just get it done and let's sell it. It's like a stock. You're holding on to fucking Bitcoin and you're like, all right, fuck it. It's not going to get any higher. Let's sell it or whatever. That's where I think they're going to go with it. They're going to get McCollum. And they're going to ask for that king's ransom, but I think everybody's going to tell him to fuck off.
Yeah, I think it could drag on, and that's a risk that Philly have. The closer this gets to training camp, you don't want that guy in your locker room if he's not returning calls at this point. That relationship's over. That's your ex-girlfriend. You've deleted her email, you've deleted the phone number, and you've taken your car back from her. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, we'll move on now to our big guest and interview. Enjoy. Well, moving on to the Olympics, we have a very special guest joining us. I've been meaning to get him on the podcast for a long, long time. Finally arranged some time. He's on the other side of the country. He is the former New Mexico Lobo, former Minnesota Timberwolves, Phoenix Sun, New York Knicks, and most notably former Chicago Bull, 3-time NBA championship winner, 3-time Olympian Luke Longley. Welcome to Rogue Bogues.
It's good to be on finally, Bogues. I've been banging on your door for how long is it now? I've been asking to get on the show. It's been quite a while. I was a little bit disappointed you let Andrew Gaze on before me, but I understand that there's a pecking order in Australian basketball. I get it.
I don't know about all that, Luke. A little bit of porkies there. I've been trying to get you on for a long, long time, but I like the shade early. Pro, welcome you, man, to the show.
Hey, Longley, by the way, the media has an easier time finding Osama bin Laden than you in the last 6 or 8 months, brother. So, I gotta side with my boy Bogues on this one a little bit.
Fair enough, but Bogues does have me on speed dial. I'm available to my guy for sure anytime. But I am guilty of changing my phone number, and I wouldn't mind just hitting that real quick while you brought it up. So I feel slightly misrepresented in that I'm really happy and willing to do media. Where I changed my number was that the producers of all the shows seemed to have shared my number. So I was getting call from 18-year-old Joe Peanut from Radio Broken Hill in South Queensland at 6 o'clock in the morning because he hadn't done his research to know that it was 4 o'clock in the morning in Perth. And, obviously it's my fault. I got to turn my phone off, but that I did obviously in the end. But I mean, it then got shared internationally. So I'm getting guys from Greece, Spain, Canada, you name it, calling, and they don't do their research either. And it's, we wonder if you could come on our radio show or can you do an interview? And after the last dance doco, they just got berserk where I was getting, 30%, felt like 100. It was probably only 25 calls a day. And what do you do with that?
Longley, let me stop here for a second there. All I'm saying is you hogged all the airtime on fucking The Last Dance. I was willing to get to the first dance, all right? Because you wouldn't shut the fuck up on the fucking, it's all Longley this, that. Yeah, you hogged the whole fucking thing.
Yeah, I'm like that. I just can't get enough attention. You're right. I know. I need to have a good look at my character.
And that all started, Luke. The call started during The Last Dance, right? That's when it really started to blow up for you, right?
Well, yeah. Well, the 15 years prior to that, I hadn't had a single call. Obviously, did some willing media with the Boomers when we're at the tournaments to trying to bail you out of trouble here and there, Bogues, when you'd say something silly, or those sorts of opportunities I would take. But then nothing, just crickets for 15 years after my career, which is just how I liked it. And then the Netflix thing, I think because I was largely not in it and people want to know why, and I didn't know why, and I hadn't even seen it yet, so really hard to comment. So I left the vacuum there, and that got filled with bullshit. Often when you leave a vacuum, it gets filled with bullshit. But yeah, so anyway, that's my. Obviously, I do protest too much, mate, because if it worried me, I wouldn't say anything. Obviously, it worries me. So there you go. There's my explanation.
There you go.
This is like a psychology session for us all, Longers. But
that's the first Shakespeare reference on Rogue Bogues, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's definitely not coming from Pro.
And let's be honest, it'll be the last one, unless I'm talking about food. That's the only time I get poetic around here.
Right.
We'll get into that a little bit later. Let's get started. We've brought you on here to talk mainly international basketball. You don't follow a lot of NBA these days.
Yeah.
So international is where it's at. Start with a few quick news items before we get into the actual Olympics. I'm not sure if you saw, Luke, or Pro would have seen it, but Adam Silver and the NBA have announced that they would like to implement new rules to reduce, it does say reduce, and I put in brackets not stop, non-basketball related moves to draw fouls. So I'm not sure if you watched any NBA at all, Luke, but I mean, it's hard to watch at times. There's a lot of searching for fouls, the rip through, and look, you probably don't blame the players completely because it's been whistled that way. But watching Fiba, for me, these last couple of weeks, it's much more pure. It's a much more pure game, more chess involvement. So I was interested to read this from Adam Silver. I think they're kind of aware that they've probably tuned into a few Olympic Games and realized, it's probably a better product. It's going to end in an hour and a half, 2 hours. It's not going to go for 4 hours. And there's just no superstar treatment. How do you see that, Luke?
Yeah, it's a great opening. It's a great opening for me because it's a bit of a soapbox for me. I don't follow the NBA at all until the playoffs, and largely because of exactly that problem. I find it frustrating to watch that the game has become playing the officials rather than playing the game. Like, I feel like that's becoming an elite skill, is how to draw the officials out of the woods. And I'm really, really glad that the NBA is looking at addressing that because it takes away from the game and it lends itself towards the hero ball, the one-on-one thing where you get a mismatch and you get a guy on skates and get him up in there and jump into him and get a foul. Like, it's really it's not an attractive basketball to watch, and I think it takes away from the game a lot. So I'm excited about it. And to support what you said, Bogues, I enjoy watching the national game and the NBL more for exactly that reason. And I feel like the international coaches are also rolling the dice more and being to think outside the box more. They've got obviously less talent to lean on, but longer periods together. I don't know, but there's more going on from a coaching point of view that interests me. A lot of the NBA stuff is, as I just said, is not as interesting. So I love the NBA. It was fantastic for me, and I'd love to be following it more closely. But if they clean up the playing of the officials, then I will watch it more for sure.
And Pro, how far do you think they go with that? Because we all know it's a superstar-driven league. The NBA loves to promote and market superstars. So with that, they need to be scoring 20, 30 a night and getting to the line. As I read out that statement, what was interesting is it says reduce. It doesn't say stop, Pro. So do you think there's any chance the superstar calls kind of stop, or do you think they just maybe get 5 or 6 less free throws a night?
Yeah, I think that John Lowenstein, who's trying to, the fourth string point guard in the Phoenix Suns trying out for a summer league, is going to get fucked on this call more than James Harden's going to get fucked on it. I think they're going to go hard on it like in preseason. I think they're going to go hard on it early in the year. And then I think it's going to start tapering off, a little bit. I think that the superstar treatment in the NBA is not going anywhere. It's going to be here to stay. I think they're going to be big with it. But I think just like most of the other things, I remember these referees coming into the locker room, and you did it all your whole career, Bogues. When they come in, they talk to you in training camp. This is what we're going to, really look at this year. And then in training camp, you see it called a lot. You see it called the first few games of the year. And then by fucking January, it's like, it's a free for all. So I think they're going to go hard early. And then I'm not saying they're going to like disown it, but I think that they're going to go back to the superstar calls pretty early with it, in my opinion. What do you think?
Let me argue that one for a second, if I can, Bogues.
Go for it.
So I guess the best example I can think of is the verticality rule.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was playing, if you jumped straight up and it was the opposite. It was a block. So the referees were given a platform to change the way they interpreted that rule. It took 5 years, and each year they interpreted it more strictly, and now it's made the game much better. When a guy comes flying in the lane, if you're vertical, hands up, it's fantastic to me that the big has an ability to defend vertically if he's off his feet. And that is something that the officials made the statement, and they chipped away at it for a few years, and it gave them a platform to actually get it done. I want to assume the officials want to get it done. So I guess what I'm trying to argue is that I don't think it ever happens in the same season, but I think it does happen when they have an intent. And I use that verticality rule as an example.
Now, Bogues, are they just going to do the rip through? Are they going to do like, if I'm straight line driving, I got a guy on my hip and I lean into him, are they going to stop calling that call? Like, I didn't get the full interpretation.
Yeah, they haven't said exactly. It was pretty open-ended. It said just implement new rules to reduce non-basketball moves used to draw fouls. Now, the big running the middle of the lane in defensive transition, Chris Paul sees him, dribbles in front of him and falls over. Like, that's the kind of shit they need to cut out. Searching for contact, like jumping, like you said, the cha-cha-cha, jump sideways into, to try and absorb some contact and get 3 free throws on a jumper. That they just need to stop it. And we spoke about it last week, Luke, Pro and I, that Jared Dudley, of all people, he commented on it publicly saying, the referees just need to stop calling it, and the players, for a game or two will be pissed, but they'll adjust. And what I found funny is in Fiba is even yesterday, Zach LaVine had a pump fake, defender jumped, he hit the 3 and then thought he got fouled. A lot of the NBA guys are just staring at the official every other play because they're like so used to getting these calls. Whereas Fiba, it's like, no, we're playing basketball. We're not going to do all the antic stuff. Now, is Fiba perfect? No, they make mistakes too. But I think to Luke's point that it will take time, but arguing that, the NBA put in a flopping rule years ago and they were gung-ho on it for a year, maybe the first 3 months of the season. That's disappeared. We don't hear about anyone getting fined for flop warnings. They put in that strict technical foul rule with anything. You couldn't even look at a referee or throw him a bad bounce pass if they tee you up. That's gone. So I think it's trending. It's in the media. It's going to be topical. And I'm with Pro. I think eventually it's just going to disappear and go back to where it was. And, it's just one of those things that's a great talking point, and FIBA's doing so well that I think Adam Silver probably thought it'd be a good idea to discuss.
What I think, Bogues, is, first of all, they got to go back to that respect thing to the referees. Like, I think if you across the league, if you let everybody know that you're not messing around with the disrespect to referees, that you're going to tee people up and throw them out if they're disrespectful, because not only are the best players doing it, like any player does it. They show the refs up and it's a lack of disrespect, and it's just every play. And I think that you have to nip it in the butt. And I think that the only way I think that you get this really done with the non-contact foul stuff is to, after the fourth or fifth time you do it, that you start adding some fines and or suspensions with it, which they'll never do. But I think you have to set a statement like, this is what, we really mean business with this. But like you said, they go away from a lot of stuff when they start saying, "Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do this." And then I hope Luke's right. I hope within 4 or 5 years that it's, they get it. Hopefully before that, but I just don't think. I think they'll get it a little bit. And like I said, I think the ninth guy in the team is going to get that non-call versus like James Harden or Steph Curry or something like that.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. Well, we'll watch the space. Go ahead, Luke.
Well, this last bit on that is I like what Pro said about the respect for the refs and the fact that it's every play and everyone's doing it. And I guess it is about trying to reestablish that power balance to where the players don't feel like they can behave that way with the referees on every play. So maybe this is the kind of rule that actually gives the refs a firmer footing to manage the game on. This is the kind of rule that it doesn't just stop those fouls being called. It actually gives them a bigger stick, and hopefully they can blow the whistle in a way that the players will respect them more than they do now.
Yeah, it gives them a bit of currency, a bit of they can be a bit more disciplined on their calls and not be afraid of the league coming down on them. Anyway, we'll move on from that. An interesting one I also picked up, which I want to give our USA friend here on the podcast some shit about. There's some NBA players and officials that have been on record complaining about the FIBA basketball, Pro. So that's why shots aren't dropping for Team USA that usually drop, apparently. An ex-NBA player, Raja Bell, it's a huge deal. He said he's spoken to numerous players. I've always said that FIBA balls affected my shot and other NBA players' shots tremendously. I hate that ball. It's lighter, feels smaller, different texture. He goes on to continue to smash it. They actually got a few scouts on record as well, Pro, saying the ball is definitely a factor. How big a factor, I guess, depends on the particular player, but it's an adjustment for everyone. Some guys are going to make the adjustment easier than others. Pro, what's going on, man? I think the ball's round. I think it's the same weight. I believe everything's the same. It's just a different brand.
Yeah, it's as round as my fucking stomach. Let's be honest, Bogues. Everybody has to deal with it. Everybody deals with it. Right? And if you're going to make excuses of why you're not making shots, yeah, it's different. No doubt about it. Texture's different. It feels different. All that stuff. But come on, man. A lot of these guys have been out of it for a while, playoff-wise. They have plenty of time to train with it. They got 12 Instagram trainers they work with. They got plenty of views on social media. You can't get one fucking FIBA ball to work out with. Give me a break. That's not a fucking excuse. Now, you could say, hey, look, the game's referee different, the style's different, all that stuff. Fouls are called differently. Use those excuses, which they're not excuses, but use those. Don't use the fucking basketball, man. Come on. What, Steph Curry didn't make threes when he fucking shot it? Larry Bird didn't do it at 92? Come on.
And it is an adjustment. Look, there is an adjustment, but like you said, it's an adjustment for everyone. It is hard. The NBA, I always struggled with NBA balls. I'm not sure about you, Luke, but the NBA, the leather balls that they used to use, they've changed them now. They're going to more synthetic, but the leather balls, every single ball you picked up was different back in the day. I'm going back probably 6 or 7 years ago, and probably when you played, Luke, where every because leather ages and fades and feels different for each ball, right? So you'd go to one ball would be dark brown, one would still be orange, and I struggled with that sometimes arena to arena, where I was like, these ones feel completely different. I felt like temperatures of climates actually affected the way the leather felt, probably a little bit in my head, but they felt different. So there is an adjustment, but like you said, it's a part of the game. The NBL has different balls. You go to FIBA and it's molten, and then Spalding in the US. But at the end of the day, that's what it was like in college. I remember in college, every conference, I don't know if it's still like this, Pro, but every conference had a different ball sponsorship. So it was like you'd have to go to all these different arenas, and it's just something you had to kind of deal with. It's the same as rims as well. And in college, for the most part, when I played, there was different feel rims in different arenas. The NBL has that as well, where every arena's got different rims, and that's a bit of an adjustment. But if that's what your gripes are, I think it's just a little bit of sour milk, Luke.
Maybe that. I agree with you. I have to admit to never once giving a shit about the ball. When I was playing, I had much bigger. I was trying to get my left foot in front of my right, Never thought about the ball once. But I will say that I think there's about 500 variables every time you shoot the ball, from whether you're fading forward or fading back or left or right or handing your fade, whatever they are, the lights in the stadium in your eyes. I feel like texture of the ball is just another one of those small variables that guys take into account every time they shoot the ball or step on the court. And elite basketball players make thousands of those adjustments a game. I feel like the ball adjustments one those guys will make easily. I think it's more like off-season blues to me.
Yeah, I think Longley was worried about J.R. Ryder slicing his fucking throat in his sleep rather than, an NBA ball versus a FIBA ball back in Minnesota, Bogues. What do you think?
The J.R. Ryder reference.
Hey, I love J.R.
Oh, I love that Minnesota team that you're on.
J.R., that's a good call.
Yeah, he was worried about fucking, Chuck Person giving up the fucking ball once in a while. He wasn't worried about fucking, he wasn't worried about a FIBA ball, believe me.
Hey, you got a good memory, Pro. That's black and white television days you're referring to.
Hey, pizza's good for the brain. I'm a fucking genius, but believe me.
Yeah, we had Oscar Schmidt references with Andrew Gaze in the pod, Luke. So
right, okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know how people are. They're the types of athletes that don't give you excuses. There aren't many of them these days, but they're the ones that don't care. Like, look, if they own it, if they're not playing well, they're not winning. Most are going to go to some type of an excuse. Like I said, if you're going to go to an excuse, go to style of play, how the game's officiated. Don't go to a basketball, because besides Middleton, Holiday, and Booker, who came right off the flight from winning or losing a championship, who didn't really get a chance to use the ball and work, a lot of those guys have been eliminated from the playoffs for a while, and they could have plenty of time to work with. I remember working for Tim Grover, and we had Dwayne Wade, who played in the Olympics. He'd come in about a month before the Olympics. We had 3 FIBA balls on the court for him, and he would, get used to it. Yeah, probably the first few workouts, it was a little bit off. Not that he was Larry Bird by any stretch of the imagination, shooting the ball, but he got used to it pretty quickly. But come on, the fucking ball, give me a break.
I'm pretty sure Paddy's shooting okay. It'd be interesting to survey the other NBA guys that have made that adjustment.
Yeah, exactly.
Paddy's shooting the ball.
Saturansky's playing well.
He come out of the NBA.
Yep. Rubio's doing, Rubio's shooting well. So it just seems to be Team USA. But I don't think any players have gone on record, but I know there is some gripes with it. Is an adjustment and takes you about a couple of days and then you should be good. But let's move on to the games. Pro, did you catch the USA game? So
I did.
US obviously losing to France. Wasn't a shock that they lost. It was how they lost to me. It was the opening game of the Olympics for the US and France, but a late game run by France, 16-2 to finish out the game. It felt like US had control of that game all throughout. The ISO-laden offense for the US really dried up late, and I feel like they're heavily vested in Kevin Durant just bailing them out whenever they need a bucket, and probably a good guy to have when you have that problem, but yeah, 16-2 run. The game finished 83-76. The US went on to blow out Iran by 60-odd points. And at time of recording yesterday, they beat the Czech Republic. After a scare early, Czech came out of the gates and were up, I think, 10 at one point and ended up losing that game. But how do you see the US's run so far, Pro?
It's a learning curve. Obviously, they're going to figure out they're not any of the dream teams in the past. They're not going to just show up and win games, especially these days. I think that their way they were playing early on, especially against France, switching everything just to switch. We talk about that all the time, about that, how that's such an NBA thing to do in FIBA, because they're so post-up oriented and they're just smarter players, that when you switch, they're going to attack the switch in the sense that they're going to post up instead of just dancing around with the ball for 22 seconds of the shot clock and trying to get by the big. They're just going to throw it right into the big down low that had a 1 switch on them or 2 switch on them. And then also they'll bring that weak side player to the high post and high low, at which they were killing that. I think, and then the ISO stuff with the way the offense is run. And let's be honest, I don't care what offense they were going to run. They're NBA players in this age. They're going to ISO. They're going to step back 3. They're going to do that cha-cha bullshit. And I think they figured out you can't do that against these teams because they move the ball, they shoot it, they're smart, they post up, they get you in foul trouble. And I think post-up defense is a big problem for them that I think teams will still take advantage of going into the medal rounds, which they're not great. They foul a lot. They got some good post players. And I think it's a little bit troublesome. But I think what happened in the Czech game, like you said, they went down 10. They still hung in there for about 2.5, 3 quarters or so. And then they just sort of, Tatum finally woke up from his coma. He started playing well. And then Durant was on fire, made like 3-4 threes in a row. I mean, they're going to out-talent most of the teams. The teams I think they won't out-talent and show up and just beat them because they got better players are the Australias, the Frances, even Slovenia to a certain degree because they got Luka. So, I think they're playing a little bit better. The ball's moving a little bit more. Defensively still, though, I think they're going to get beat on those switches, and I think they're going to get posted up. But, yeah, I think they're getting a little bit better at it.
Did you catch any of the games, Luke?
Yeah, I've been watching the games. I got my own thoughts on the challenges for the USA team, and I suppose it starts. So, first of all, I suppose just the continuity that the other nations have. If you look at the Australian roster, how many guys have known each other since AIS days, since they were 18, younger even, and played together. France has got the same recipe. Spain's got the same recipe. Most of these international teams, these guys have a long connection and a bond and a common basketball language. Obviously, that enables them to play a more interesting, a deeper, richer style of offense. But also defensively, I think they've probably got their schemes bedded down. They also know how each of them is going to defend better individually. So the continuity part, or the lack of it for the USA, is tricky. And, we think about the coaches on the USA team with Pop and Kerr. If you could not find two NBA coaches that are better suited, but who have been proponents of ball movement and interesting and ambitious styles of playing offense. I remember when the Spurs won the last championship, everyone was lauding them for San Antonio basketball. Was that exactly the kind of basketball we all love, where it was equal opportunity and ball movement. So it's not that the coaches don't have an appetite for it, or they don't have players that can't do it. It's the continuity piece, I think, that is the real challenge for them, and where they're starting to come back to the pack of international basketball. Because now the talent thing's starting to level up a little bit. The continuity piece is becoming a really big factor, and I don't know how they're going to address that, but that's why they end up getting beaten by France, or why they're vulnerable to an Australia. Is that such a big part of the game and such a big part of how a team's built? How do you put a bunch of guys together 3 weeks out, in some cases 3 days out, and expect them to compete with that, even with a talent surplus? I don't know the answer for them other than building a program that lasts longer. It just doesn't work as well as it used to.
Yeah, I mean, watching that game for me, I think you hit it on the head. I think the continuity thing, but Pop is starting to look frustrated at times, just with some of the decision making, and it's interesting. Like you said, Steve Kerr and Pop are big advocates of ball movement, and there's not a lot of ball movement on that team. There's just so many guys on that team that for their clubs, if it goes swing and gets to them, they're shooting it, right? So I noticed a few times, even in the Czech game in the first half, like Tatum, they're in full rotation, it gets thrown to Tatum, and it was just it had to be a quick swing pass, and he holds it for 2 or 3 seconds looking to get into his ISO, and then swings, and it's too late. And that's what they're suffering a little bit, because they really don't have many role players on that team that can just understand, hey, I need to make that right play, rather than I haven't had a shot for 4 possessions. I need to get in my bag a little bit. And that's the interesting conundrum. The battle for the US, in my opinion, is more with themselves and other teams. It's like you said, playing the right way. They tend to go small pretty early, switch 1 through 5. Now, Euro teams will punish you for that, because they'll get that big on the block. And we saw that with Czech. I mean, they don't have dominant post players. Big fella was decent, but they really exploited having Devin Booker on the 3 or 4 man rolling, and they scored out of it. So I totally agree. I think it's interesting, but for me, I think the battle is within their own group more than it is against other teams.
If you look across to the Australian version of that, what have we got? 6 or 7 NBA guys, but all of them are role players in the NBA. Even if you include Paddy, although in this iteration, in Boomer's Paddy, he's taken on the role of the go-to scorer, or what I like to call the fulcrum point for the offense. So the NBA guys in the Australian system, like Fiba, for instance, or Dante, they're less prone to what you're talking about. They're less prone to catching it and going into their bag, because they're used to playing off the ball. So they almost suit this a lot better. The guys on the dream team, on the American team, tend to be guys who are the terminal parts of the offense, the end of the offense, the guys that are going into their bag. So when you've got 7 or 8 of those guys, then you've got a sticky ball. Whereas you got the guys on the Boomers, and I think Spain's very similar. They're all guys that are happy to facilitate, even though they're coming out of the NBA. And that's my extension, I suppose, of the point.
No, I agree with that. And I just think that, players should look themselves in the mirror about, like, they gotta, and it's hard because that's the way they played their whole lives. ISO, don't pass the ball, just, coach allows you to do whatever you want. And now you get into this sort of ecosystem where you have to, you have to move the ball, you have to cut, you have to, you're not going to get shots every other possession, that you have to understand how to play with each other. And it's tough. Like you said, the continuity piece is big, but you should look yourself in the mirror and say, maybe the way I play, I got to change this up a little bit and do a little bit more as far as passing the ball, moving, screening off the ball, doing some of these other things, because most of the roster is ISO oriented. I mean, look at all those guys. I mean, look at the USA teams before this, even when the ones with Kobe and LeBron and Chris Paul, Darren Williams, like those guys could pass the ball, and they do play a lot on the ball, but they could sort of downshift when they need to. Where this team, it's tough for those guys to downshift because that's the only way they play. So I think they're going to have a little bit of issue deep in the medal round. I still think they could beat 9 out of 12, 8 out of 12 teams just by doing whatever they're doing. But I think that there's going to be these 3 or 4 teams that come up that's going to give them a problem.
Yeah, the luxury they have, regardless of all this, is Kevin Durant. To have that guy do what he's doing, not only in the NBA, but in Fiba, he's amazing to watch. He's an ISO guy, but and his frustrations at times when I was with the Warriors for that small stint was like, hey, we don't need to run all this misdirection shit. Just give me the ball and get the fuck out of the way. And he had a point sometimes because he catches it elbow extended or 18 foot or even top of the key behind the 3. That's where he's going to get it late in offense anyway. So sometimes he'd get frustrated and be like, just give me the ball there early in the shot clock, and not understanding that at times you do obviously need to get other guys involved to feel comfortable. But yeah, they have that luxury of a guy that in close games that they can just throw it to anywhere on the court. And in my opinion, I've said this on record, I think he's going to go down as one of the best scorers of all time. Not a big call by any means, but just with where on the court he can score from. For me, it's anywhere. He can get in the paint. He's athletic enough to throw it down on you. He's good from all points of the 3-point line, and he can just get to his shot because he's 7 foot tall. It says he's 6'10", he's not. He's 7 foot, and I think that's the one luxury the US have that they didn't have in 2019. They didn't really have that guy that they could just throw it to for an ISO. Where this team might not be as ball movement worthy, but the luxury of just at 10 seconds getting a bailout, which he made yesterday against Czech. He made a few big bailout shots late in the shot clock, and it's tough to stop.
Yeah. The way Durant ISO is a little bit different than where Tatum or Zach LaVine ISOs too, by the way. Like, the shots that he's going to get, especially being 7 feet tall, they're a little bit more cleaner than the other guy, those other guys who dance around a lot and just take fucked up shots and then just sort of get into a rhythm that way. Durant will catch you at the elbow, a jab you off, shot, 2 dribble pull up, transition 3 pull up. Like, he's not dancing around a lot like these other guys. He's a little bit more sort of streamlined into his package of things that he could use offensively.
Yeah, so, more efficient.
Yeah.
More efficient. All right, Slovenia, Argentina. So this was a Luka Doncic show, 48 points. His first Olympic Games, opening game, just absolutely killed it. We'll break down his stats a bit more later on, but they are going to be tough. They have surrounded him with a bunch of shooters, a bunch of guys that just, as we just spoke about, know their role. Pressure is on Luka. Obviously, his usage is going to be, probably at an all-time high for an Olympic Games for them to have any chance, but you just don't want to doubt the kid. I mean, what he's doing out there, just such a big, strong body. Do you put a smaller, quicker guard on him that he can just bully, or do you put a bigger guard that's probably a little slower? It's a conundrum for most teams. A bit easier to scout before you play him because we got to put together a defense to stop Luka Doncic, but then implementing that over 40 minutes is tough. But that game was just a great performance, Luke. I'm not sure if you caught it, but he was getting to every spot on the floor. He was hitting threes, he was getting to the free throw line, and he was getting guys involved, and just an amazing performance.
I didn't watch it, Bogues, and I found Dallas hard to watch this year for the same reason, is that he's just such a high usage ball dominant guy. I think he's great, but it's just not fun to watch for my money, so I didn't watch it.
All right. Pro?
Yeah, I mean, the kid's ridiculous as far as I think that when we were talking about it last week about the Olympic stuff in the last couple of weeks, you just need to, like you said, put shooters around him, put guys that don't need the ball. I think if you have anyone else that plays with him that needs the ball, it's a good, bad thing. The good thing is the guy's one of the smartest players I've ever seen, and he's one of the most competitive guys I've ever seen. And obviously, he has the results to back it up. But he can't operate with another guy that needs the ball like that. that even needs the ball even close to like that. So I think the team they have around him is perfect. He's played with Dragic a bunch. The other guys are just shooters and sort of role players. And I think they're going to be tough. I don't think they have a chance for a gold, but I think they have an outside chance to get that bronze, to be honest, just because anytime he steps on the court, he's sort of like a fucking cyborg. Like, he just sort of knows what spots guys need to be in, and he can pass the ball. He can shoot. Obviously, he gets to the basket. He's a streaky shooter. I don't think he'll ever be a great shooter. I think he'll always be feast or famine when he shoots it. But the rebounding, the passing, the size that he has at his position, it just makes him tough to beat. I don't think they're good enough to beat like US or Australia, but I think they might be able to sneak up on France or someone like that if they're not looking, and be able to try to get a bronze. What do you think, Bogues?
Yeah, well, the reason why I bring them up is because they potentially will be a crossover game for us, which we'll get to. We'll break down how that all works a bit later. But, I mean, my concern for them is, does Luka burn out? He's playing 30, 35 minutes. The usage is out of control. They're one bad Luka game away from being out, essentially. Now, time of recording, they play Spain tonight, which will determine where they finish exactly. But yeah, I mean, probably not a team you want to face in a crossover. Probably rather get a Czech or an Argentina if they qualify in the first round. But it will be interesting just to see how far he can carry him off his own bat. I mean, they've just surrounded a bunch of three-point shooters. Dragic does play on the ball a little bit and give Luka a bit of a rest, but for the most part, it's going to be Luka Doncic versus whoever, and we know that he can win a game off his own bat. So it'll be interesting to see. But we'll move on to the Australia games. We'll cover all three of these. So I've been lucky enough to commentate these here in Australia. So had first-hand experience watching every minute of these. Australia versus Nigeria was the opener. I'm not sure if you saw any of these, Pro, but if you have, chime in. But I feel like we were lucky to win that game, to be quite honest with you, because we turned the ball over at a really high clip, opening game of the Olympics, but so did Nigeria, so that it evened out. Nigeria missed, I think they shot 50% from the line. They missed 10 plus free throws, and we ended up cruising to victory towards the end. But it was a closer game, and I feel like if Nigeria, didn't turn the ball over as much and knock down free throws, that could have been a potential loss. But we got over the line, and if you looked at a stat sheet at the end, you'd say, oh, yep, easy win for the Boomers. But it was an ugly one, and I think we adjusted beyond that to the other two games. But just touching on that one, I'm not sure if you gents saw it the same way, but I think we kind of dodged a bullet early in the Olympics.
Well, yeah. I mean, traditionally, opening games, Australia hasn't done well in opening games ever. There's a lot of first-time Olympians or guys that are new to this sort of competition on our team. I was terrified for them before that game. I really did think that was going to be a bogey game for them. And they played initially to my expectation. And the example is the turnovers. They just threw the ball away. They looked shaky. But what I thought was interesting in that Nigeria game was the point in the third quarter where Australia had solidified, started to play better, started to use the ball better. I think they might have been only 2 or 3 points up. And there was a couple of plays where it just looked to me like it was the evidence Nigeria needed to believe that they weren't able to compete, that Australia were better. And their body language went to shit, and they changed. The team dropped. The team dropped, literally physically. You just saw their body language change. And conversely, the Australians, those couple 2-3 plays were the evidence they need to know that they were a superior team. And from then, the trajectory of the game just kept going in the opposite direction to what it had earlier. And it's amazing to me when you can see basketball games pivot like that. And the Nigerians, they haven't been in that top 4 or 5 teams in the world for a long time. And it's almost like you have to get past thinking that that's where you fit and where you belong before you can beat teams like Australia. And Australia's only recently gotten into that echelon where that's where they believe they are. And so it was almost a belief thing in that game was a differentiator. And I know that's oversimplifying, but it seemed really visual and visceral to me.
Yeah, Bogues, you're right though with the turnovers for sure. Like taking care of the ball, I think. And to Luke's point, like opening game, there's some jitters there. So I could see that happening. They just played a little nervous. It seemed like forcing shots, forcing possessions, and they just sort of got into their rhythm. I think it's important to get punched in the face early, figure it out, say, hey, look, we got to sort of pivot on how we're going to play these games. And I think they've been pretty good ever since. But yeah, I mean, Exum, what do you have, like 4 or 5 turnovers during the game? Guys like that got to take care of the ball. I know Patty and Joe turned the ball over a little bit as well, but they got into the flow and their rhythm, and they just started, being more efficient and playing hard, and they just sort of rode it out. But yeah, it was a little bit nerve-wracking at first for them, for sure. Nigeria was hanging tough, but they just sort of turned it on, last half of the game for sure.
Yeah, and got it done at the end. Like I said, you look at a stat sheet, for most people that don't follow the game that closely, and you'd think it was a good performance, but it was just uncharacteristic of us. I mean, even Delhi, who looks after the ball, his assist-to-turnover ratio, he made a few uncharacteristic mistakes, but they got the win done. I think where they've really excelled is defensively. They've done a fantastic job, and that's where we move on to game two, what I like to call the return of the big man in this game, which was nice to see. The bigs really did a fantastic job. Baynes, Landale, and Kay all in double-digit scoring, and it just seemed like they weren't really isolations in post-ups or anything like that. It was just working like a big man should, rolling hard, and we really affected this game on the offensive board. And I would say, again, probably dodged a bullet because of our effort. We didn't play the most clinical game. We didn't shoot the ball particularly well, but I think our bigs kept us in that game and kept us that little lead buffered by second chance opportunities. I mean, Jock Landale, Nick Kay, and Aron Baynes just tipping out offensive rebounds, a few free throw tip-in rebounds at our end to get us an extra 2 points. They really got us out of some messes offensively just by getting us a reload opportunity with an offensive rebound. So I know Longers would be happy to talk about the return of the big man in that game. It was nice to see.
Yeah, mate, it was nice to see, and a lot of it was work rate. Those guys just worked really hard, and as you said, all the little things that they did, the rolling, the O-boards, the tipping. I mean, these days, especially more than ever, with the game going away from the post-up environment, that is the role of the big. And I was excited to see it, and I'd be more excited if they would. I'm actually happy to see them post Jock up a little bit. I think he's pretty efficient down there against bodies that aren't too much stronger than his. But I was. The other thing I suppose is the guys that handle the ball a lot are doing a nice job, starting to do a better job anyway of rewarding those guys for their work rate as well. And they keep rolling hard, they'll end up giving people fits. So, yeah, I enjoyed that game.
Yeah, and just real quick, Jock Landale, 18 points, Aron Baynes, 14 points in 14 minutes, and Nick Kay, 15 in 26 minutes. So they did a very good job. Ingles had 14 in that one, and Paddy had 16, but I think the bigs were just a key pro.
Yeah, the little things like you're saying. I mean, I think there's not a lot of Greco-Roman wrestling going on for rebounding. I think they do a good job. Wandale does a good job on the roll, if he doesn't get the ball, getting like the inside position on the big offensive tip outs. I mean, he had a few of those, both those guys, Baynes and himself and Kay had a couple of those where they're just smart. They're playing smart. They're rolling hard to the rim. They're moving the ball. Those bigs really build those guys out. It was a tough game. I think Italy, hung in there till the end. And I just like the little things that Australia did for sure during those, during that game as well. But the bigs, they're screening well. They're rolling well. And they're making some things happen. So, yeah, it's been fun to watch.
And Longer's pro thinks that Jock mows lawns and calls him Lawndale. So, just going to have to deal with that along the way, mate.
Yeah.
Well, he needs to do the top of his hair as well as the side of his hair. He's got the lawn on the side and the bushy bit on the top.
The old mohawk.
Yeah, he should roll up in a trailer for the game and just wear a wife beater with jean shorts and play the game. I think that's a fucking great look for Lawndale, don't you think? We'll call him Joe Dirtdale.
He's a country boy. So he's
love the kid.
His family has a farm. He's a great kid, though. I've got a lot of time for Jock Landale. Moving on to the final game of the pool, first round of the pool round, Australia versus Germany. Now, this was a battle. I spoke about it on telecast. It was kind of the ultimate battle of small ball versus big ball, really, because Germany refused to go small and match Australia's smaller lineups when we went Matisse at the 4 at times and Jock at the 5. And it worked for Germany when you looked at the stat sheet because they really out-rebounded Australia. They were, the count was 45 rebounds to 28. So as we spoke about in the game before against Italy, our work rate on the rebound was phenomenal. But Germany kept getting offensive rebounds, but just couldn't capitalize on those offensive rebounds. But our small ball lineup just caused a lot of problems defensively for Germany. We had 13 steals in this game, and a lot of them were for breakout layups for Matisse and excelled our break for Dante to get ahead of steam on a 4-on-3 or whatever it was. And that's the big
sticking point I've found with this national team for Australia. We were really good defensively the last couple of campaigns, but adding Matisse Thybulle and Dante Exum that length, and Matisse, I think he's going to be. He has a chance to be NBA Defensive Player of the Year in his career. I have no doubt at all. He just affects so many plays, gets deflections on passes that he has no business even being in the realm of. He made a play probably, I think, in the second game against Italy where he probably stepped up too high on help side, and then they threw a bounce pass and he just spun quick and got a deflection and then got the ball back. Led to a fast break. So just been phenomenal to watch, and probably that missing piece, Luke, of what we haven't had with the national team. We all love Joe and we know what he brings, but he's not that athletic, specimen that Matisse Thybulle is, and he just brought a great defensive prowess to the Boomers.
Yeah, mate. I've been a fan of him with the Sixers, but I've been blown away by his level of athleticism, how smooth he moves, how well he reads the game. I mean, he's rebounding. He's rebounding in there with the trees. I'm a big fan. He's a guy that knows his role well. And you're right. So when you've got guys like him and Dante on the back side of a defense and having to cover out two guys on the weak side and then close out hard and still contain, that changes what you can do on the ball. So he puts air in the sails of the guys that are on the ball and gives them a lot of confidence. And I think terrifies the ball handler. Those guys are coming off those screener rolls on the strong side and seeing him back there, and they're hesitant to pull the trigger because he's so long and he reads it so well that, he, as you say, mate, I think he probably benefited greatly from guarding Ben Simmons from the last 2 or 3 years in practice, or 2 years, however long he's been in the league. He's great at staying in front of the ball and using his length, and surprisingly quick, recovers from mistakes really well. Sometimes I like when he makes a mistake because chasing from behind and making those reads, he's terrifying. And you can see guys looking over their shoulders the whole time and watching him. And so, yeah, I concur, mate. I think he's a game changer for us. And certainly the coaching staff that I've spoken to with the Boomers feel the same way. And he's just going to play more and more minutes as he gets more and more comfortable and they understand what he is. I'm a fan.
And on top of that, reportedly, on top of that, a fantastic guy. I mean, from all reports, the guys, he hasn't been part of the national team before. No one really knew him that much from juniors. Didn't spend a lot of time in Australia as a kid, but they said he's just a phenomenal person, fully bought in, great personality, loves to joke. And that's a part of, that national team culture is fitting in with all that and making sure that, you leave whatever your problems are at the door and for the greater good of the group, your off-court issues stay there. And he's been sensational in that, bro.
Yeah, I don't know how much better he got from God and Ben Simmons. I mean, when he was defending him, all he had to do was sit at the top of the charge circle the whole fucking time, Longley, but I'll take your fucking word for it. But no, I think that the guy's going to be better than Bruce Bowen. I've been doing defensive breakdowns, the best defenders technique-wise in the NBA, and I spent a lot of time on him. He's so technically sound at 22 years old. And it's forget about like the length and all that, which makes it easy for some guys to be good defenders because they get steals. A lot of people think like just getting steals is makes you a good defender, and he does that. But like his technique getting through screens, how he plays off the ball on top of on the ball. I mean, the guy is phenomenal at that. And Bowen didn't really get going until he was about 25, 26. He didn't really become a really elite defender until he was about 27, 28 years old. Because remember, he was a journeyman. This guy already is probably fundamentally better than Bruce Bowen was at 22 than Bruce was at 27 or 26. And I think he's just getting started. I think this kid's going to be really good. He's definitely a championship caliber player, and he changes things because he could defend any position. He can keep you in front. He seems like a great kid. And I watched a couple of his vlogs on YouTube. He's a funny bastard. I think he's a championship level player. He reminds me of like that whole Giannis thing where he's just a great kid and he's a good player. Obviously not that caliber player, but just sort of like him as a person. It's infectious sort of being around the guy, it seems like. So I think, to have that guy in your national team for years to come, for like 4 more Olympics, it's great.
It is. Did Bruce Bowen win a Defensive Player of the Year ever, pro?
He did not. No.
That's surprising because he was one of the premier. At least when I came in the league, he was kind of phasing out, but perimeter defender and three ball. That was kind of that was his role.
20 to 23, second team all defense. 23 to 28. 2003 to 2008, first team all defense, but never won the award.
Yeah, that's interesting because he's phenomenal. But I think Matisse will have one of those trophies when it's all said and done. An interesting observation out of this Australia-Germany game, the loss of Aron Baynes reportedly hurt himself in a game against Italy, and then further hurt himself in a bathroom incident in the fourth quarter. They've announced that he's out for the remainder of the Olympics, so they went into this Germany game. I didn't know who they were going to start. They ended up starting Nick Kay at the 4, Jock at the 5, and it looked like we didn't miss a beat. Look, I think right now, and probably even the next game, we won't see how the absence of Baynes affects the Boomers, but I truly believe that the Frances of the world, the Spains, even potentially the US, Baynes is a pretty big out further down the tournament. If you remember correctly, Longley, he had a hell of a game against Rudy Gobert against France in the World Cup. He took Rudy out on the perimeter. I think Baynes might have been 5 for 5 or 5 for 6 from 3 that game, like just shot the piss out of the ball. And you factor that in with his big body and ability to roll, I think people need to realize that I think towards the end of the tournament, that is a pretty big loss, and it thins out our rotation now. Now all of a sudden Nick Kay's playing more minutes. The backup for Jock and Nick now is Duop Reith, who's a inexperienced player at Olympic Games, hasn't played a whole lot of basketball, but is a solid body. They like what he's doing, has length, but it just has thrown the rotation out a little bit minute-wise. How do you see all that, Luke?
Well, you pretty much covered it, mate. I think it did show up in the game against Germany, even though we won. I think you have a rebound count in front of you, but I know that there was a possession where the Germans had 5 offensive rebounds in a possession. That doesn't happen with Baynes on the floor. It just doesn't. Jock's a great rebounder, but he doesn't take up the kind of space that Baynes takes up, and it's going to wear guys out having to fight for space and come back in from the three-point line to help out. Like that workload that Baynes soaked up is going to hurt on the boards primarily. He's a fantastic screener. Now, there's nothing against the other screeners, but he's an elite screener and rolls great. I think, and also I've got to put my hand up and say that I'm an unabashed Baynes fan. I mean, I've worked with him since he was young. I know him as a man. I really like him. So this may be biased, but I was devastated for him. I spoke to him after he hurt himself, and to hear the guy over the phone was just absolutely gutted. And he also brings that fantastic competitive fire and energy and slight edginess to the group. You know, people are scared of bangers. Ask Valanciunas. No one wants to deal with Baynes when he wants to seal you down low or fight you for the glass. Like he's terrifying. I'm scared of him. I'm sitting on the bench coach and I'm worried about getting whacked. You know, like he's an X factor, and I think every team needs that, and I love that about him too. So to say that will we or won't he miss him, I think is a waste of time. Like they're going to miss him. It's how they cover up for him. And there are guys there that can, and Gorge is really clever, and they'll do it. But it's a big out.
45-28, the rebound count last game against Germany. So spot on with your analysis there, Longley. Might need to get you on Channel 7.
Thanks, Andrew.
No worries. Moving on to that. So the seeding for this is a strange one. So for everyone that's not familiar, there's 3 groups of 4. Get ready for this, Pro. I've explained it before, so get your head around it. But the 3 first place teams go in a pool, and the best second place team go in a pool. They're all together. And then it's the next 2 second place teams and the top 2 third place teams. So what we're looking at it looks like the US will be on our side of things, which is a good thing. We don't get them till the top 4 if we get there. But from what I understand, our opponent will be in the quarterfinals will either be Argentina or the loser of Slovenia and Spain, which is tonight at time of recording. And the way they do it is it's random. So it's done by ping pong balls, I believe. So nothing now in FIBA is predetermined. The reason why they have done that is to stop tanking. There were teams, in the past that was within the rules. They'd lose a game on purpose to get a better cross match with someone else. So FIBA's tried to figure out a way now of how to eliminate that, where you can't move up or down pending a loss. So from what I understand, we are facing Argentina or the loser of Slovenia and Spain, which I think that'll be a tough quarterfinal match. We're all hoping that it's Argentina, but at the same time, we are ready to go through whoever we have to go through to get a medal. So I'm not sure the guys will be thinking too much about we'd rather this team, rather that team. I think the task at hand for them is 3 more wins and having a gold medal around their neck, Longers.
Absolutely, mate. I mean, my first question to that is, how does random work with FIBA? I mean, some of the decisions I've seen Fiba make in the past. I guess I would really like to know how the system of randomness works. I think it's fair enough to have the goal of trying to stop teams from manipulating the order in which they finish to avoid the USA or whatever those circumstances are. But it feels like an autonomous hand of God that they've given themselves where they can fiddle around with the matchups to get the results they want. Like, I don't like that at all. I'd like to see some transparency to it anyway.
No, Longley, here it is. It's a random bag of cash. And whatever flags inside that fucking bag, they get the higher seed. All right, so that's the fucking randomness. No, not at all. Not at all. And I don't need the.
You said it.
I'm not trying to get a job at Fiba. I'm fine. And I'm not the one who eats the cookies either. On Christmas Eve, when I tell my daughter the fucking reindeers eat it. So don't worry about it. No, I'm joking. I'm joking, obviously, but
no, you're not.
I don't know.
No, you're not.
Yes, sure. I'm not.
You just want to be able to do another camp in Greece next year that they pay you for. That's why you're joking.
Yeah,
they paid me in feta cheese. I'm fucking out.
Yeah, but it will be interesting, Luke. To your point, I don't know how they figure out the random drawing, whether they televise it like NBA draft or what they're doing. I highly doubt it. So transparency will always be questioned, and we'll see how that all goes. Real quick, we'll just finish on the Opals. They are 0-2, the Australian Opals, the women's national team pro. 0-2, staring down the barrel. They look to be in some trouble. They lost to Belgium. Belgium looked really good, but the China game was ugly. We did not look good. Very, very clunky. To be even in that game late, Genoa hit 2 big 3-point shots to tie the game, and then China got a dubious call late to make 2 free throws and win it. But they, I believe, have to thump Puerto Rico today to stay alive in the tournament. So the Opals, for these years pro, as Luke would know, they've been kind of the forefront of the Australian national team program. They're the ones that bring home the medals. So to not see them there at the end of this, Luke, is might be a little bit disappointing. Hopefully they get it done.
Yeah, devastated for the girls. I think that, obviously they have been the flag bearers, if you like, internationally for us for a long time. And there's, they've had so many great players in the WNBA that, Australia's women's basketball legacy is undisputed. So it is a definitely disappointing couple of matches so far. And, losing Liz right before the tournament probably gave them a lot of work to do to figure out their identity offensively, is what it looks like to me. From the games that I've seen, that they sometimes lack that fulcrum point that the rest of the players can leverage off as they go, and they have to sort of invent stuff a lot. So that's challenging to do in a tournament against good competition. So I've got that. Do you happen to know how hard they have to thump Puerto Rico to be a chance, Bogues?
I don't have the math.
Thumping, just a broad thumping.
I believe, they'll be they need to finish in that top 2 best third place teams, if that makes sense. So they need to. It all depends on the percentages from the other 2 groups of the third place team. So if both their losses have been close losses. The China one was 2 points, so their percentage is in their favor. But I guess a 15-20 point win should get them over the line, depending on other results. But the Liz point for sure. And I think,
is there a chance that the FIBA's random rule could work in our favor? Is there a chance that we send Pro over there with a bag of cash and we get it done?
We'll try. We can try. But hopefully the randomness helps us.
As long as I don't see an In-N-Out burger on the way, I'll definitely deliver that cash in full. So don't worry about it, fellas.
And to your point, Luke, about Liz, I think that's a key point, because I think this team, arguably, if you knew Liz was not playing pre this tournament, I think there might be some different selections, because most teams, I think the picks would have been, who are our best role players that best suit Liz? Liz is our number one girl. We're getting her the ball we need some shooting. We need people that probably don't handle it as much. So my argument would be, if you know she's not playing, you probably have different selections for that Opals team, Luke.
Yeah, quite possibly. I haven't looked at it closely, but obviously when you have a player that dominant, you do build around them, and then that piece goes, and suddenly the building doesn't make sense, and you're walking out the back door instead of the front door, so to speak. So it does look a bit that way from the outside. I'm not close to it, and I don't really know, so I could be talking out of my ass.
That's Pro's MO.
We do that plenty around here.
That's all we do. At worst in the media, as long as you just make it up, no one will notice. All right, real quick, we're going to go through a few stats. We have a segment called Useful or Useless Stats, and you let us know if you think they're useful or useless. Luis Scola, power forward, reached the mark of 548 points after scoring a total of 23 in his debut in Tokyo. Scola ranks on the all-time list behind Spaniard Pau Gasol, also active in these Olympic Games, with 623 points so far. In second place is your former teammate Andrew Gaze with 789, and in first place is the Brazilian Oscar Schmidt with 1,093. So it just shows
nice.
Scola's halfway there, and this is his fourth, fifth Olympics. Just amazing numbers. I think that's a pretty useful stat. Just seeing Luis Scola still running up and down at 41 years old is just amazing.
It's a useful stat. First of all, props to Scola, because while he is a scorer, he's no Oscar Schmidt or Andrew Gaze. He's not having everything run through him. He's not taking, he's not that model. He's more of a pickup truck than a sports car. He carries a lot of other load. And so for him to even be in that conversation, it speaks to his longevity, but also just how efficient he is. Useful stat to me. The Oscar Schmidt thing, I remember playing against Oscar Schmidt and just being stunned at how many shots he took and how completely focused the Brazilians were on. I mean, we're talking, he might receive 15 screens in the course of a single play. Like, he's just run off staggers, off pinches, of doubles, and if he has no shot, he throws it, keeps going off the next screen, and it was like a merry-go-round, and really, really hard to stop. So, yeah, I'm rambling now, but I do like the way Scola plays, always have. I'm really, stoked to see him in that company.
Yeah, I think it's useful for sure, but let me add one to it. Is this useful or useless? The 4 assists and 1 defensive stop that Gaze had in his whole fucking Olympic career. I just want to know, are those 2 stats useful or useless?
We only celebrate offense.
When did he have that defensive stop? I'm confused about the defensive stop, but anyway.
That's a good point.
The great man. Yeah, we'll have to look pretty far back. All right, next one we'll plow through these because Longley's got to go. He lives about 5 hours from wherever he's going. So the Luka Doncic debut, when the final buzzer sounded, he tallied 48 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 assists. Useful or useless?
Right.
In Olympic competition, I think it's useful. I mean, that's a hell. People don't really score like that in the Olympics. So that's for the first Olympic competition for to a guy to score 48, 11, and 5. I mean, I'm not really big on individual stuff, but in the Olympics, where, like I said, it's usually pretty even. Yeah, 48 points is an outlier for sure. What do you guys think?
I've already given my 2 cents on Luke Doncic's brilliance and how I see it in the scheme of things. So I'll step out of this one.
Yeah, I think it's useful and very useful for teams that are going to be playing Slovenia. You can, you're not Einstein.
Hey, Bogues, are there Slovenian mobsters where fucking Longley lives? He keeps on stepping out on all these fucking Doncic conversations.
I don't think he's a fan. I think he doesn't like the ISO ball.
That's all right.
Oh, you forget. I got history with Slovenia. Do you remember what I have a deep history with Slovenia, and I do tend to step out, don't I? So Slovenia were the team that suffered from in the World Cup that basically were forced to cross over against the US because we lost to a shit team.
Angola.
And so the Slovenians and us have got a long history. No doubt.
That's right. There were some questions. I don't remember that, Pro. So there was, we played Angola, and there was some rumours that we purposely lost that game to get a better crossover match, and that then made Slovenia get the US. So there was some bit of argy-bargy between Luke and the Slovenians. So there is a bit of a touchy part of that story.
There you go. There you go.
There are Slovenian mobsters, mate. I can tell you for sure.
All right, last one of this, useful or useless. The United States women's team are on a 49-game winning streak at the Olympic Games since losing to Unified Team in Barcelona 1992 semifinals. The all-time best Olympics basketball winning streak rests with the USA men's team, as they had 63 games in a row from 1936 to 1972 until they lost the gold medal match against the Soviet Union, the infamous second chance game against the Soviet Union at the Munich Olympics. Useful or useless for the girls?
Well, it's an amusement. I don't know how useful it is. You're only as good as your last game, and yeah, it's an amusement for me. The girls got a long way to go. I do feel like the game nowadays, there's less, the way the game's being played, there's less chance for sort of dominant legacies. I think the talent is spread more broadly over the world, and the talent's all being exposed to WNBA and NBA. So the chance for that sort of absolute dominance, I think, wanes. So I think the 49 is an interesting number, but I don't think they get to the 63. Useless.
I think it's I think it's useful as far as the stat. I don't think they're going to get to the 63. Don't get me wrong. But I think if you just ask me if that's an impressive stat or useful to know, I think it is. I mean, that's tough to sort of have that type of streak in Olympic competition. Especially, it's not like the men, where it's so dominant for so long with the men's team. Yeah, I think it is a useful stat on that end. What do you think, Bogues?
Yeah, just the dominance of it. I think it's useful as far as they've dominated the last, X amount of years. Interesting you guys say they want to get to 63. It's only, a number of games, probably 2 more Olympic campaigns. So they are the most dominant team in basketball at the moment. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. All right, real quick fact or fake news. Long as last segment, and then we'll have a quick chat and we'll let you go. We do a segment that you think the statement is fact or fake news. We're going to put you on under the pump straight away. The loss of Aron Baynes will cost the Boomers a gold medal in Tokyo, Luke.
Fake. I think that they have still got the weapons to do it, and I don't think there's anyone out there that's that convincing on the landscape that I'm terrified of, even without Baynes. Fake.
I think it's fake news. I think they'll find a way. I think some of the Reith and some other guys got to step up a little bit, but I still think that they're good enough to beat. With their game planning, and they're still good enough to beat the U.S. Not a guaranteed or anything, but I don't think that's going to cost them. What do you think, Bogues?
Yeah, I agree. A pretty simple one. I agree. I think we're playing good basketball, and I think it's really solidified our small ball lineup. As much as Longley and I hate small ball lineups, it's solidified those, and I think the rotations just had a slight tweak, but they'll be okay. Next one: will Luke Longley remain the only Australian with 3 rings for the next 20 years? Pro? So I think I think Gaze has 1, I have 1, Delhi has 1, and that's it, I believe, right?
Yeah, I think he'll be the only one. So that's fact, right? Fact?
Yep.
Yeah.
Luke?
Well, I'm with you, Pro. I think it's fact, and here's why. As I said earlier, I just don't think that. I think that the days of sort of dynastic rule are over with the speed that players are moving between clubs, with the way the game's being played. I just don't think you're seeing that continuity in teams. I mean, even if you look at the Warriors, KD was there, they won a couple, then he left to go somewhere else. I just think that the days of three-peats are there's going to be less and less of them, put it that way. Then you've got to throw in the odds of an Aussie being there at the beginning of it. There's guys coming through, but there's a lot of our old Aussies are sort of getting towards the end of their career. So you really got to think that Joey, Paddy, Delhi, those guys are definitely Delhi is coming out. Then 3 years more in the league is going to be a lot for them. So they have to start winning next year. So I'd say if you give 20 years, I'll be really stoked if someone did, but I'm calling that fact.
Pumping your own tyres as usual, long as geez. But you got Matisse, Ben Simmons, an opportunity. Josh Giddey, of course, who was drafted. So there are some younger kids there that have the op, but I think they're all on teams that, as of now, don't have that opportunity. Last one, the Olympics will become less and less of a priority for high-earning professional athletes over the next decade plus. Fact or fake news?
Longley, what do you got, bud?
I got fact. I think it's already happening.
No, it's already happening, but will it become even more rampant? Will we even see to the point where, more, let's tax it on even more?
Yeah, so 2 things for me. Yes, it's fact, and here's why. One is that I think the USA team is going to have to go, I suspect, my guess is that they're going to have to go towards a model where you're on the team for 4 years, not just, make a call 30 seconds before the Olympics whether you're coming or not, so that they can develop that continuity piece. And I think that the star guys are going to be less attracted to that, so they're going to get more middle-tier guys who are committed to the program and build an identity, and that's how it's going to work. But there's my Nostradamus on how the USA gets back to the top, so fact.
Yeah, I think it's fact. I think it'll be all esports by then anyway, by the next Olympics. But no, I think it's going to get worse. I think it's going to get worse. I think it'll all be TikTok videos for the next Olympics to see who got better. But no, I think it's going to get worse. I think that players aren't going to want to. I think that you're right, Luke. I think they need to go to that model where they play. They got to go for 4 years. And you need a sort of a developmental team as well to keep people in the mix. But I just don't see I think it's going to be harder and harder to find the big time players to play. The only thing it's going to take is another version of them losing. What was it in 08 where they went down again and then they had to revamp the whole system?
04, yeah. Athens.
Yeah, I think that I think even through 04, an 04 situation, that those guys aren't going to want to play like that. I think that it's going to have, guys getting hurt, Olympic Village, all that stuff. Oh, not that they have to deal with the Olympic Village. They get the fucking Love Boat, cruise ship, where they stay on. But
fucking Love Boat.
I think it's going to be harder and harder.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's not just in basketball. I'm calling it for a lot of sports. I think it's just not going to be a priority in the Olympics. They're starting to lose a bit of their mystique. You got breakdancing in there now. You got skateboarding. They're desperate to get young eyeballs watching the Olympics. I think they know the writing's on the wall. They need to do something, and that's a factor as well. But I think we're going to see more high-end professional athletes, whether it's tennis, golf, whatever, that are just going to be like, nah, we're not going to do it. I'd just rather make my money here. So we'll see how that goes. Luke, thank you very much. We'll wrap this up. I'm going to tell a story, Pro. So I didn't know Luke growing up, and we got off on a bad foot inadvertently. And
shocker.
Yeah, shocker. So I told the story in My Journey. My agent was like, before the draft, if anyone compares you to they were kind of plotting white plotter, a big slow white guy, distance yourself from that. And I was a young, dumb kid, and I listened to my agent.
Use the word, Bogues.
What's that?
You've got to stay on brand and use the word, man. You want to call me a big white stiff, you go ahead.
Plotter. Yeah, plotter's probably worse. Oh, big white stiff.
They did consider him the Australian Joe Klein, by the way, before he came out, just so you know. But go ahead.
But anyway, I got asked about it, and I just basically, shout on old poor Luke. He's in retirement in WA, and just said, I'm better than him. I'm better than in all these categories, and went a bit gung-ho about it, not realizing that I disrespected one of the greatest to ever play. And that was how we struck up our relationship.
Flying start.
Luke had fired back in the media. I remember it to this day. His rebuttal wasn't too aggressive. It was just, I hope the kid, I'd wish the kid has the runs on the board before he starts chirping, essentially. And then I never really dealt with Luke for the next decade odd. Luke then joined the fold of the national team, and we really got along. We're kind of polar opposites personality-wise, but I respected Luke's kind of yoga-ish kind of thinking on things, I'd say, Luke. Is that fair? Luke kind of thinks outside the box on a lot of things, and sometimes brings you some things that you're like, shit, I haven't even thought of that before. I've never even given it a second thought, and we struck up a pretty good relationship on that, and Luke calls it as he sees it, much like I do, and that's how we got started. But Luke, give me your best Olympic memories as we finish this off. What are some of your best memories? You went to, what years were you? You was 96, 2000, and was it 92?
No, 88, right?
88, 92, I missed 96 and then 2000. But I just want to go back to I'm living in Freo. I'm living, but stayed under the radar for a while, raising my young kids, thinking that my basketball life had pretty much, done that. It's cool. Generally respected by the Australian Basketball Project, not too bad. Then this kid who I hadn't really heard much about suddenly called me out in the media. And it was funny because I remember I was actually sitting there having a coffee and someone showed me this article about it. And there's this another story that runs parallel to this, but I actually at the time remember thinking, well, you know what? Good on him. I understood, Bogues, 100%. Like, you don't want to be. So I was limited. I was a role player. I was, I wasn't greased lightning either, although I had my moments, I have to confess. But I totally understood. But I just remember thinking to myself, this kid's plucky. He's got guts. Like, he's going to be pretty good. And Gorgon tells the story a little bit like that. Not to stroke you up too hard, Bogues, but Gorgon tells a story where he had a similar situation where Bogues had a rip at him when he was about 17. And this is the national coach, and the punchline to Gorgon's story is, after he got cussed out by a 17-year-old Bogut, he said, well, I guess that kid's going to be pretty good one day. He had that fire, and I guess we all saw that back then, and I did enjoy getting to know Bogues later in life, and we are opposites, but sometimes that's what life's about, right? Everyone can't all be singing from the same hymn book. And, I remember going out to lunch and having lunch with Bogues when I decided to be on the national team and saying, look, mate, we're sort of two of a kind, if you want to look at it that way, where not a lot of big, ugly 7-footers roaming around that have played in the NBA and won a championship, and we're going to be on the same team. Let's put all that shit in the past. And I think in one breath, Bogues put it all in the past, and we got on with business, and it's been fun ever since. So good on you for being open to that, Bogues, and it has been fun.
Yeah, no doubt. And you did throw the ugly in there. Thank you for that. But give me your Olympic memories.
A little jab.
But I've had myself in the same bucket, don't forget. So I said us, not you.
Yeah.
That's why it's a podcast, not a TV show, right? I get it.
That's exactly right. M-rated.
Bogues, don't frighten the fucking guy. He's already been hiding from the media for the last 18 months. We don't need him in hiding for another 18 months after this podcast, all right?
Olympic memory, I do have. I guess I've got a bad memory, but one story I will tell is, so I'm 18, I've gone to my first Olympics, and I've got at that stage, my very good mate Andrew Vlahoff on the team, and Mark Bradke was also young on the team with us, and we got there. We weren't expected, we were going to play, but we weren't. The team was older guys. So we figured out really quickly that the dining hall was the place to be. The food was free. Like, we've been living off scraps mostly, as 18-year-olds do. Down there to Macca's, McDonald's was free. The food was free. But more than that, that's where all the girls were. And that's where you could just watch you could see everybody down there. The dining hall was the melting pot of where it all happened. So Andrew and I just posted up at the dining hall. We were like, this is gold. Anyway, we go for our first weigh-in about 4 days after getting there, right before the tournament. We both put on nearly 4 kilos just from hanging out at the dining hall and watching the girls come and go. So the doctor's like, we got to start monitoring your diet. We've got to do this and that. Anyway, our solution was, we'll just eat with chopsticks. So we stayed at the dining hall, but we never used forks or spoons, and that way we couldn't eat as much. We stayed there just as long, and we went on the chopstick program. Anyway, now I'm a ninja with chopsticks, mate. I can catch them out of the sky. I can catch flies out of the sky with chopsticks. I spent that much time in the dining hall eating with chopsticks, so I could see all those amazing Olympic sort of athletes cruising by. And that's, the dining hall, funnily enough, the dining hall remains one of my favourite parts about the Olympics for that reason.
Yeah, there you go. The specimens that you see at an Olympics, you hit it spot on. I remember going to my first one in 2004 at Athens, and the villages are like a suburb for the people that don't know at home. And I remember walking a dining hall was about a 10-minute walk, and every now and then I would just stop. There was like a park bench. I would just stop with my coffee on the way back and just people watch and just see like the most amazing bodies wearing absolutely nothing or bare minimum, and you're just like, wow, I'm here. Like, this is pretty crazy. And on one end you're seeing the most buff, strong dudes, and then on the other hand you're seeing some very, very pretty females. So it can get you in trouble, Luke. So I totally agree with you, and I can see how you put on weight, and that's Pro's excuse as well for his weight gain.
Oh, without question. Luke, I had a question though. Before you go and ice your Achilles out from stepping out of 27 conversations, I know it's pretty sore. But as far as your playing career, when you left Chicago and you got traded to Phoenix, right? Did you have any overinflated sort of idea about your game coming from 3 straight championships, and then you go to Phoenix? Sometimes players being in that championship sort of mold and being so dominant as a team, then they go to the next team and they maybe think that they're a little bit sort of like not losing edge, but maybe just have a little bit overinflated idea about their game. Did you have any of that when you left Chicago to go to Phoenix?
Good question, mate. I don't think my view of myself has ever been overinflated. Probably, if anything, I've suffered from, the opposite of understanding my limitations in a way that maybe defined me too much. When I went to Phoenix, I took the package that I was successful with in Chicago, but I suppose I never was able to capture the same joy again. To put it simply, I played hard, I did what I needed to do, I trained hard, but it was so much fun playing in Chicago in the triangle and with the guys I was with, and basketball just didn't have the same luster. It became a job for me, and I mean, it always should be a job, but it became more of a job and less of a joy when I got to Phoenix. So my lack of form in Phoenix wasn't so much about me having an overinflated sense of myself as much as it just didn't work as well. The other thing was my ankle was starting to degenerate by then. One of the reasons I think Chicago signed and traded me is they could see that ankle was on its way. It only lasted 3 more years. I 2 years in Phoenix. Then I was actually at the Sydney Olympics nursing my busted ankle trying to get our first medal. And I got traded to New York in the middle of, I was in the Olympic Village in the Donga in the middle of Sydney.
I remember that.
And it was that bad ankle that ended up predisposed me to injuring my knee in the game against France, and then we didn't get a medal that we should have got in Sydney. So good question, mate. But no, I don't think it was. I think you're on the scent, but the wrong animal.
Yeah, not overinflated, Luke. I'm sorry. I should rephrase. More like you got some easier looks in Chicago because of the team. You know what I'm saying? And then, like, Phoenix, did you find it harder? Like, obviously, because you didn't have the talent in Phoenix, like, collectively. Did you find it out now? Oh shit! For 3 years, I had some easy looks because everybody was doubling Michael and Scotty. Was it a lot tougher, or you just found because you were a role player, it was just as?
Let me just back you down with the easy looks bullshit. Okay, there's nothing easy about posting up Patrick Ewing or David Robinson or Akeem Olajuwon or Shaquille O'Neal or Brad Doherty or any of those guys,
right? And
trying to get your hook shot away. There ain't nothing easy about that, no matter what team you're on.
Yeah. Well, I think he shut me the fuck up on that one, so I'm off.
Yes, we need to get Luke on more, man. I like this.
Yeah, no
Put
shit.
him in his box.
Yeah.
He said no. All right.
Yeah, hey.
Hey, good on you.
Let's wrap this up, Luke. So this is going to air on Monday morning Australian time, or hopefully Monday afternoon. There's a big story coming out about you. Can you just tell us what it's about, promote it, and let us know why you did it and what we should expect?
Yeah, mate, there's a lot of answers to that. So Australian Story is coming out Monday. It's a 2-part series, so the Monday the 2nd and 9th of August. I suppose I didn't ever consciously set out to avoid the media, or I just didn't choose to seek it. I've never really sought out the limelight. I was happy to be a role player, and that was what my skill level determined anyway. But I was happy. I suited that role. I've never really either hated or enjoyed it. So I guess when you don't seek it, you don't get it so much. So, and I was happy with that. But I suppose when The Last Dance came out, which a lot of people saw as a doco on Netflix, basketball doco, and The Last Dance was the moniker, the mantra that we had for our last season in Chicago. It was, Phil gave us a handbook at the beginning of the year, and it said on the title page was The Last Dance, and it was our roadmap to the championship. And it talked about, the administration of the Bulls had said that we were going to not re-sign everybody, like Phil and Michael, and it didn't say anything about me, but that was the assumption. Pip wasn't going to get re-signed. So this was our last dance together, and let's use that as our motivation to find a way to solve the problem of winning a championship in a new way, because every year you sort of got to slightly modify it and do it again. And we were all getting a bit older and a bit more banged up, and it was a shortened season because of the lockouts, so that presented its own challenges. Anyway, I'm rambling, but I suppose when The Last Dance came out, I did expect it to be more about the whole group. And, we'd had camera crews follow us all year into our homes and in our cars and to the barber and to the grocery shop. And ESPN just documented the whole thing. So I suppose I was excited that Australian people, but more the new generation of Australian kids who only know LeBron and guys younger than that, and video. They only know me from the video games, really, because apparently you can go into the archives and dig up the old fossilized players and play them on the video games I don't even really know. But I thought when I heard The Last Dance was coming out, I was like, great, Australian kids are going to get to see that there was an Australian that did it back in the 90s, and because it was the first, that was exciting. And then when it came out and I wasn't in there other than, cameos taking a shot or what have you, I was disappointed that story didn't get told. I cared less about my personal legacy and genuinely cared about the fact that I wanted the story told, that there was an Australian that went over there and played and did it. And I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it. It was me. So I suppose this documentary or this show on the ABC is my response to that. So I'm really proud of what I did. I really want people to know the story. And I chose the ABC to tell it because I didn't want to necessarily do the 60 Minutes thing or the sensationalize it. I just wanted it as honest and candid as it could be. And that seemed like the best, least commercial and most honest forum to do it. And it's been a year now we've been working on it. And I've had to dig through a lot of people. My parents and my ex-wife have all had to sort of work on it. And it's been a big job and I'm quite proud of it. And last thing I'll say is I haven't seen it. The ABC, you're not allowed to see it before it goes to air because it's proper journalism. They don't give you any editorial discretion. So there's a high degree of trust there as well. But I'm actually going to watch it with a bunch of mates and really excited to see it. And as much as I have a reputation of avoiding media and that sort of thing, I guess I am deeply proud of the history that I made when I made the NBA and then won those 3 championships. And I'm glad that it's documented in this fashion. So that's a hell of a long answer, but I hope anyone that's interested in it is satisfied with the result. And I know, well, the other thing is we're actually chasing Dennis Rodman for the last interview of to go into the bag. Not sure if we'll get him. He's in Mexico filming a reality TV show.
Shocker.
Otherwise, everyone's participated. So I know. How about that? I tried to get him for a week, but it was his 60th birthday that week, and I could never get him. He was always out partying. Every time I spoke to him, he sounded like he was in a nightclub and been there for a while. But we did get MJ, we got Pip, we got Phil, we got Steve Kerr, and then a bunch of my mates and family as well. So there's enough characters in there other than me to keep it colourful. So get out there and watch it. It'll be fun.
Do they have Elijah on tape saying he was pissed because you had so many easy looks against him in the fucking triangle? No, none of that?
We might have to get you on there, mate, because that angle needs to be told.
If you want to zoom me in tomorrow, I'll join your watch party. I'll bring the pizza, buddy.
Hey, I tell you what, bro, you don't have to turn over too many rocks to find someone that wants to shit on my basketball game. They're a dime a dozen.
By the way, in those video games on the archives, you usually got to pay for those. They pay you to use your character, so don't worry about it. I've used you many a times in those video games.
I hope you go the lefty rolling hook, because I think that's apparently the only one that works.
There you go. Bogues getting pissed that he can't end it, so let's before he blows the gasket, let's go through.
Longest has to go, but the Australian Story 2-part series, it starts at 8 p.m. Monday, August 2nd on ABC TV, iView and YouTube. For those overseas, hopefully you can see that. So it'll be the 2nd and the 9th. Good luck with that, Longers. We'll be watching. I know a lot of basketball fans in Australia and the world will be intrigued to hear your side of the story, not just Last Dance based, but just in general about your life, because I think the story needs to be told. Thanks for joining us on Rogue Bogues. Hasn't been too hard. I hope it wasn't like pulling teeth. I had to put the leash on Pro a little bit, but I think it's gone pretty well.
Well, I've enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on board. I really did enjoy it, and I enjoy your podcast. I've been listening to it a bit lately, and it gets me down that 5-hour drive to the city with a few chuckles, so keep it up.
All right, thanks, Longers. Appreciate it, man. All right, we'll just finish off with a few Q&As. Got a good one for you, Pro. One of your former little ball boy minions that you had under your wing in Dallas has emailed through.
Oh, fuck. He doesn't have any pictures on me, does he?
I don't know if it's a question as much as it is. Anyway, it's a lengthy email. I'm finally caught up on the pod. It's now my favorite podcast to listen to every week for multiple reasons. It's great back and forth banter, tremendous basketball insight from various perspectives, and overall just very humorous and engaging. With that being said, let me introduce myself. My name is Brett Rao.
Oh, fuck.
And I was part of Pro's last intern class in Dallas. It wasn't a tremendous year for the Dallas Mavericks organization on the court, but it was Luka's rookie year and Dirk's last year, so every day was still a phenomenal day for us interns. From 11 interns standing around half court watching your guy Harrison Barnes work out, fear of shooting a basketball our first week, scared to grab a protein bar as a snack, to Dennis Smith Jr. rolling his ankle on an intern's foot, and Rick Carlisle wanting instant video review to see how badly he should yell at an intern, to eating the same breakfast burritos every day for breakfast, and many other hilarious stories. It was a hell of a year in Dallas. If you ever want to guess, nobody knows to come on the podcast and talk about Dallas Pro stories. Life as an NBA intern, NBA college hoops, let me know. I'll be more than happy to be a guest. And truth be told, I didn't like you as a player, Bogues, and for absolutely no reason at all. It was just one of those things. But I've now become very fond of you after listening to your pod and learning a little bit about who you are. Apologize for the lengthy email. Tell Pro I say hello, that I need to give him a call soon to catch up. Our intern group still has a daily group chat titled Pro's Final Infantry. I wish you guys the best as you continue on this podcast journey. And as Pro says, stay out of harm's way. What do you got, Pro? Give us some goss on Brett.
Yeah, first of all, he was a walk-on at Missouri, and the only reason why we hired him is I wanted some intel on the draft from Michael Porter Jr. He was probably 980 on my list, so I don't really give a fuck about hiring Brett, but he is actually a good dude. You know, it was my last group. I knew it was going to be my last year, probably 2 years before that fucking year even came up, so it was my last group of interns, but yeah, Brett was a good dude, man. He was funny, and you know, those interns, boy, they were an interesting group. I remember trying to get the interns themselves, like get the thing hired. Cuban wanted us to hire a person in every city to defend people in pregame, and I knew I knew they wanted to fire me anyway. That would definitely get me fired trying to do that stuff. So we ended up doing this group of like 2 guys that grew up to 2 to 10 to 12 and ended up costing the organization like $200,000. But those guys are worth their weight in gold. And I think it changed the standard of a lot of teams of how they did interns, because usually they had a couple of interns here and there. Our group was at 12. Teams figured out that maybe not to get 12, but get a lot more than they had. And I think that teams sort of started copying that. But it's funny, man. Like, Rick was hard on everybody, especially, interns that were outside. He didn't want people that are going to leak information or anything like that. So, we had to sort of coach those guys up every day and figure out, say, look, you got to be where you got to be, or this guy's going to get all over you. He's going to eat your fucking lunch. So, trying to get those guys on target, they just can't be 12 freeloaders that just ran around. They had to be organized. And, we did things for them. Like we had breakfast every morning for them. They had breakfast burritos, like you said, every morning, the same thing. But it's hard, man. Those guys could only I think they could only work like 24 hours a week. They were basically living on like $1,400 a month and basically just covering rent just to be there. But hey, look, we have a lot of guys that got hired as assistants in the D League, head coaches in the D League now, assistants in college, assistants in the NBA. It actually was very rewarding, I think, for them to go through a program like that. So it was pretty cool. We did things like draft review, where at the end of the year, we would bring those guys, break down draft video, talk to them about player development, sort of gave them a sort of a coaching class every day to try to like get them better at developing players, to get them sort of into their next job. So it wasn't a very lucrative job for those guys. They worked a lot of hours. They logged a lot of minutes. Obviously, the guy didn't like you very much, but, what are you going to do?
Who doesn't? You're not wrong, though. When I got to Dallas, I was like, holy shit, there is a lot of ball boys. I was like, or interns, as you call them. It was bonkers compared to most teams I've been with. And I actually remember one of the poor, I forgot his name, tore his Achilles right in the preseason. So a lot of the interns, or ball boys, as you call them, they would jump into drills 5-on-0, or even 5-on-5, no contact. And one of the poor guys tore his Achilles, and then I remember he was trying to argue to even get, insurance for the Mavs to pay for his rehab. And I was like, come on, guys, like you gotta take care of the kid.
No, the Mavs did it. Yeah, they did it. They treated those guys really well, though. Like at first they didn't know what to do with them, but then like, it got better. When he got hurt, that the Mavs covered his rehab. I don't know about the surgery thing. I didn't get into that, but I know they covered his rehab. And, he came in all year to do that. I think, I forgot where he ended up. I think that guy ended up at like Penn State as a grad assistant, but I'm not sure. But, Bogues, what I didn't like about coaches in the league, that this is the reason why we hired these guys, is I don't like those guys, coaches trying to be Bruce Bowen and playing D on guys. You're not going to recreate what they're going to face in games. B, you're going to get hurt. I've had friends pop Achilles, tear knees, tear shoulders, and it's just not worth it. And as an assistant coach, especially in player development, you need to be having your eyes on the player. And I think if you're passing the ball, you're a rebounder, you're playing defense, you can't watch, correct, and teach. That's my opinion. And I think if you're trying to be Bruce Bowen, I think that like those interns were invaluable because they did all the passing, the rebounding. When Rondo wanted to work out at 1:00 in the morning, when Dwight Powell wanted to get in at 6:00 in the morning, or work out on a Sunday, or work out on Christmas, those guys are in there for it. And I think, having a program where they're not just running around, where they're organized and you're trying to teach them, how to be coaches and how to be in development and how to help their careers, we gave them synergy accounts. They could do stuff. We took them to summer league to not only help the team, but also like meet with other people, made countless phone calls for people to try to get them jobs in other organizations and things. So, shout out, that was great for Cuban. Cause again, it costs like $200,000, 150 to 200,000 with salaries and things like that. It's not cheap. And I think it benefited the players. Players would give them playoff bonus, they gave them money at the end of the year. They would, Dwight Powell did like $1,000 half court shooting contest. Those guys the players treated those guys pretty well. So yeah, it was a good group. Last group, I think that, our podcast isn't exactly into the 4 million listener group, but I don't think we're that fucking desperate we want that fucking hack on there.
There's the shot we wanted. All right, next one. Josh Giddey to OKC. How do you think he'll fit there and what would be his expectations? Nice to see some more Aussies. Well, we hit that earlier. Westbrook to the Lakers. Another big three for LeBron. His question is around DeMar DeRozan or Russell Westbrook a better fit for the Lakers. Shannon Sharp was pretty much signing DeMar to the Lakers on his podcast. And that was rumored early. That's from Chris Emanuelizer that DeMar DeRozan was potentially one candidate and Buddy Hield was the other one. I think DeMar and Westbrook are much of a muchness in my opinion as far as fitting in with LeBron. DeMar not a fantastic three-point shooter, neither is Russell. DeMar could probably play off the ball a little bit more than Russ, so much of a muchness there. It's just Russ's stats are much more inflated, but I don't think there's much of a needle move on either of those two guys when you compare just those two, Pro.
Yeah, Bogues, I agree with you. Now, the thing about it is you got to pick your poison, right? Like, again, those two players, before you add the third player in, Westbrook or DeMar DeRozan or Buddy Hield, like, those two guys are going to break down. They're definitely going to miss 20-plus games each, 15, 20 games each, easy, with sitting out, injuries, banged up, blah, blah, blah. So you need a guy that's going to fit in with LeBron, preferably a guy that doesn't have the ball in his hands and can shoot the ball. Well, Westbrook's the opposite of that. DeMar DeRozan's even more of an opposite of that because he's a mid-range player that doesn't shoot threes that much. So, but the only thing is when those guys, it's you want the best fit where a guy doesn't need the ball all the time because LeBron's going to want it in his hands. But when those guys go down, you need somebody who could take over a game. So Buddy Hield's not a guy that's going to take over a game. He can't take over a game. He can make shots and get hot, but he's not going to take over a game. He's not like an ISO scorer, a go-to guy like that. Where, Westbrook is to a certain degree that, but I don't know how much you can win with him playing like that. And then DeRozan is like that a little bit. But again, the shooting, the spacing, and needing the ball in their hands constantly is going to really make that a tough sell. So unless I'm wrong, which I've been repeatedly on this show, I just don't think that, the Buddy Hield thing would have been better for fit, but he's not going to take over. Those other two guys can't space the floor and need the ball in their hand constantly, and they're ISO guys. So I don't, and neither one of them are really great passer. So I don't know how this works.
Yep, I would agree with that totally. Just much of a muchness with that, and it's just going to be interesting. It's going to be popcorn worthy, that's for sure. I do know that if the Lakers don't do well, it's going to be Westbrook's fault. So get ready for that, Russell. Last question we have here: throughout your career in the NBA, what would have been the most important and standout qualities for a support staff member to help move the needle of the team forward? Talking more in the sense of beyond the expected day-to-day work, what do the best support staff members do to help make the biggest impact for the team? Thanks. Really enjoyed watching your career. That's from Mike Franco. For me, Pro, it was just being genuine and knowing that they, whoever it was, whether it was a development coach, an assistant coach, a trainer, a masseuse, that they had your best interests in mind when they were working with you. We joke about it all the time, but there's grifting assistant coaches and trainers and masseuses who will just kind of grift their way towards the star player, knowing that's their best chance of sticking around long term. I despise those people, and I really didn't respect them at all. I'd work with them. I wasn't disrespectful in any way to their face or anything like that, but I didn't have a respect, human to human respect. The ones that I respected were people that worked with player 1 on the roster and player 15 the same way. They put the same time and energy in all the people on the roster, and they didn't differentiate that. And I think that's the hardest thing to navigate in the NBA. We talk about it all the time, so we won't get into that. But yeah, I always value people that would spend that extra hour with the 15th guy, or, hey, you need a massage too, even though you didn't play many minutes, yet we're happy to figure you out. But there's some people that are like, you're the 15th guy, like, know your place, fuck off kind of thing. You're last on the totem pole. And it wasn't always necessarily that I was that 15th guy. I was always a top 5 guy most of my career on a team, but I'd see guys affected by that, and I'd try to talk to them about maybe getting some stuff on the side with someone else and just paying for it, like if it's a massage or extra work, maybe hire a development coach with a portion of their salary. I don't know, but that's how I saw it, Pro.
Yeah, I agree, Bogues. It's hard these days because it's so fake. Most of not all, but most of the support staff in the league these days are like that. Unfortunately, they grip to the top guys. And they don't go to the 15th guy. I think the first thing as a support staff you got to do is you got to do your job. You got to be good and qualified to do your job. and have that mentality that you're going to get your job done and you're an expert at what you do. The second thing is you got to have the player's best interest at heart, no question. You got to be honest. You got to be able to tell them the truth. And even if they don't want to hear it, you got to be able to give it to them. Now, that player may not like that, but I think you have to trust that where they're not lying. The thing about me and working for NBA teams is I can't lie to players. That's my problem. Like, I can't lie to them. I can't, like, if they're going to be like, well, we're going to cut him tomorrow, but you got to like talk to him like he's going to be with us until August. I'm like, how can we do that? Like, I can't, not that I'm going to tell them what's going to happen, but like, I don't want to bullshit. So I think that players should respect people that aren't going to lie. They're good at what they do. They aren't going to lie. They're trustworthy where, look, you know how it is, Bogues. You talk to all support staff, your trainer, your masseuse. Like, sometimes you're not happy with a coach or sometimes you're not happy with another player. And you don't want that shit to get out to that coach, that player, to your general manager. And I think there has to be some understanding that players are going to be you're going to be soundboards to players. And you got to be able, like, if they're going to say something, it's got to stay between you and the player. It can't get out. And I think a lot of people, that work for organizations, they don't do that. They go right to the head coach. They go right to the general manager. There's certain things to share with those people, what that needs to be said, but not in a moment of weakness where those people are going to trust you with intel or information that like shouldn't get out. It just should be you're venting. Because that's what support staff do. Look, you're coming in on an off day. You lost 6 in a row. Coach is fucking killing you. What are you going to do? You're going to fucking bitch to you're going to complain and you're going to complain to your significant other, your agent, and your fucking, and the support staff, the person who's stretching you out, getting shots with you in the morning on an off day or something like that. So I think being a professional and knowing what you're doing, I think being honest, and I think being trustworthy, 3 traits on any staff member, support staff member, that's going to be good in this league to work with players. I think those are 3 really important facts. And that's getting less and less across the league.
It is. Just being genuine and working hard goes a long way. I mean, there's showing up and doing all the right things, but then just not all guys see it, but I'll just always pick up on someone that's genuine and a good person. I'd enjoy working with them much more than I knew someone was just using it as a stepping stone to get to a different job or whatever it was. So that's just the reality of our business. But that wraps up episode 31 of the Rogue Bogues Basketball Series. Thank you to Luke Longley for joining us and giving us a bit of insight, pro, and you didn't break his nuts too much. So he's definitely got some great stories, and we appreciate his support of the podcast. Check out Australian Story, which airs on Monday Australian time at 8 p.m. and will be on YouTube and ABC iView. At Hoop Consultants, if you want to see some of Pro's coaching prowess and how he breaks down games and clips and whatnot, and we will see you next week, Pro. Appreciate it.
Folks, it's been great. Hopefully the Slovenian mobsters didn't catch up with Longley. He got out of town all right. So, and then hopefully the hamster that's on the wheel that's running his internet is okay, so we can upload the audio clips to us.
He does. He's living in the middle of nowhere. He definitely does live far away from civilization. Always give him shit that whenever he has to make a phone call to me, he has to go down to the post office, put some coins in the telephone.
That's the best.
He gets a bit of a laugh out of that. But we'll see you all next week. Thanks for tuning in.